Space is continually offering up new mysteries for scientists and astronomers to unpack and attempt to solve. And although it often seems as though many of these mysteries are unsolvable, every day we get closer to understanding more and more about the infinite vastness that stretches out beyond our own planet Earth. Whether it is strange phenomena in our own galaxy or mystifying occurrences hundreds upon hundreds of light years away, scientists have set out to uncover as much as they possibly can about the cosmic world around us. So today, here at Unexplained Mysteries, we will be looking at interesting discoveries and what they mean for our understanding of the final frontier. NASA just announced Jupiter's moon Io is sending the Juno probe strange radio waves. Jupiter holds the largest and most powerful magnetic field out of all the planets in our solar system. The field is about 20,000 times stronger than Earth's, partially due to the solar wind that batters Jupiter with electrically charged particles that blow from the Sun. Jupiter's magnetic field extends so far that several of its moons orbit within it. The planet's closest moon is named Io, and it is constantly caught in what NASA describes as a gravitational tug back and forth between Jupiter and two neighbouring large moons. This tug game generates internal heat, which causes hundreds of volcanic eruptions on the surface of Io, which is home to over 400 active volcanoes. For this reason, NASA has deemed Io as the most volcanically active world in the solar system. The moon's volcanoes release particles into space at a rate of 1 ton per second. When some of the particles split, a shower of ions and electrons enter Jupiter's magnetic field. Electrons are then pulled to Jupiter's pole, a process which emits decameter radio waves. Now, NASA is sending its Juno spacecraft to listen to Io's radio waves and hopefully help us understand the strange phenomenon. To detect the radio emissions, the spacecraft has to be in a precise location. Using data from Juno, the research team was able to determine exactly where the radio waves are generated, based on conditions relating to the strength of the magnetic field and the electron density. They discovered that the waves come from what seems to be a rotating hollow cone. Juno receives the cone's signal only when it rotates in line with the spacecraft. NASA compares this to a lighthouse beacon shining on a ship. Researchers were surprised when data from Juno indicated that the radio waves emit 23 times more energy than expected. However, this is influenced by Jupiter's magnetic field and solar wind. These findings are helping scientists understand the behavior of Jupiter's large magnetic field, and we will likely hear of more discoveries from the planet in the near future. Russian researcher suggests Venera 13 imaged life on Venus. In 2012, a well-respected Russian researcher claimed to have spotted something new within the Venera 13 images captured by a Soviet landing probe 30 years prior. Dr. San Formality made worldwide headlines in 2012 as he claimed to have spotted signs of life in the images sent back from a landing probe within the 1970s and 80s. This would suggest life on Venus, but there is a great deal of speculation surrounding the authenticity of this claim. Revealed in the Scientific Journal of Solar System Research, the discussion paper outlines a second look and analysis of the panoramic images the Soviet-built Venera 13 landing probe captured. The argument that there has been evidence of life spotted is a three-pronged approach. As San Formality indicates, 3 objects that exhibit some characteristics of living organisms. The probe landed on Venus as planned on March 1, 1982. It was stationed in the Navka Planitia in an elevated area, Phoebe Reggio. Although Venera 13 only survived for 127 minutes, it completed its task, taking panoramic pictures of the surface on Venus to be analysed and researched further. Who would have thought these photos would still be presenting more findings in 2012, 30 years after they were taken? The images involved in the claims were taken courtesy of 2 of Venera 13's cameras. In his report, he explains that there were some large objects, ranging between a decimeter and half a meter in size with, as he describes to be, an unusual morphology. Furthermore, whilst the three objects in question were visible in some images, they were also missing in others, suggesting they may have moved. The first of the mysterious objects or possible life forms is an item that has been dubbed the disk. The image only displays the lower half of the disk, though is an estimated 0.34 meters in diameter. As the frames progress, the changes in the optical axis of the scanning camera suggest the disk itself is moving too, an idea supported by its relation to the upper boundary of the image. Throughout the various pictures captured, it appears as though the shape, size, and dimensions of the disk shifts, with it even seeming to resemble chevrons at one point, according to the article published by Dr. Sanformality. The next object he studied was described as a black rag. This is seen up until the 13-minute mark in the photographs recorded. The estimated size for this rag is just 60 millimeters in height, with its origin being marked as unknown. The strange thing about the black rag is not its shape or size, but rather that it spontaneously vanishes. It is visible again from minute 27, but by 36 it has disappeared without a trace. Perhaps the strangest item spotted has been named the Scorpion. To begin with, an explanation for its presence was that it was part of the machine landing, though having been working for more than 90 minutes at its first appearance, the stray parts should have been ejected and out of the way much sooner than that. Sanformality even argues that if this Scorpion is machinery, then the lander would have been overheated due to the slow time to rid itself of the landing parts. Furthermore, the Scorpion seems to move throughout the images, emerging from soil and then disappearing once again, at the 119th minute mark. The Scorpion seems to have taken an hour and a half to dig itself out of a 1 to 2 centimeter groove in the soil, suggesting that it is indeed an animal. It has extremely limited physical capabilities. It is reiterated throughout the research paper that the images have not been edited or retouched in any way, and that the photographs shared are the raw data from the Venera 13. Some have suggested that Sanformality's words are mistranslated or pulled out of context, as the majority suggests that the marks in the photographs are not living organisms, but rather a series of camera lens covers, scuffs, and blurry images. NASA later confirmed, through higher resolution photography of Mars, that the shapes and figures seen in the Venera 13 images were likely mechanical components, as these shapes could be seen on Mars too, and could be identified due to the higher camera quality. Furthermore, Venera 14 captured similar images to 13 despite them being 1,000 kilometers apart from one another, yet the exact same shapes were visible in those photographs too. Whilst stumbling across other life forms within our very own solar system would be exciting, it is likely a false call. Even so, the images and technology to even have these debates remains a huge testament to scientific advancement as of late. Mysterious object on Saturn's moons. One of the things that is usually certain about the lifeless planets orbiting the Sun is the fact that things rarely change. Scientists looking at 2 satellite images of the same location on a distant planet, taken sometimes years apart, might find themselves playing the world's hardest game of spot the difference. However, an image taken of a lake on one of Saturn's moons caused researchers to do a double take, as a strange formation had emerged. And, in an even stranger turn of events, the formation disappeared just as suddenly as it had appeared, leaving scientists with little clue as to what it could be, where it had come from, and where it might have gone. The image was taken by NASA's Cassini probe as it circled around Titan, Saturn's largest moon, and one of the most varied landscapes of the solar system besides our own planet Earth. Larger than Mercury and over 1 billion kilometers from Earth, Titan is the only moon in our solar system with an atmosphere composition similar to Earth's, but with a much higher surface pressure. It is also the only place in the entire solar system other than Earth that has liquids, as its surface is made up of liquid hydrocarbons flowing in rivers, lakes, and oceans that can reach hundreds of kilometers across and hundreds of meters deep next to rolling dunes and mountains. It was in one of these lakes that the white blob appeared in the northern hemisphere of Titan. The lake in question is called Ligeia Mare and is estimated to be over 150 meters deep, with the strange formation measuring around 19 kilometers wide and 9 kilometers deep, and materializing about 10 kilometers off the shore. Interestingly, the mysterious figure was absent in satellite images taken just 16 days after the initial photo. Although Titan's lakes are generally totally smooth due to the lack of wind in its atmosphere, it is thought that the formation could be initial deep-sea waves as Titan's northern hemisphere begins to slowly rotate closer to the Sun. Other theories include floating icebergs, a rush of bubbles or matter being released from deep within the stagnant sea, or something suspended in the liquid below the surface. However, as the formation was absent from subsequent photos taken of the location, scientists are forced to theorize based on just one image, meaning that unless it mysteriously reappears again, we may likely never know exactly what it was that was changing on such a static planet. What made the discovery so interesting is that planetary scientists believe that if there truly is life somewhere outside of Earth's atmosphere, then they will find it lurking deep in the lakes, rivers, and oceans of Titan. Because of the interesting composition of Titan, there is a possibility that any existing life on the surface of this moon could be very chemically different from life on Earth, so scientists study any changes or outlying formations on the surface of Titan very closely. Although this discovery left us with more questions than answers, perhaps it is the next step in discovering life outside of our Earth. Scientists reveal that 100 stars mysteriously disappeared. It has long been understood that none of the limitless number of stars that glimmer across billions upon billions of galaxies were built to last forever. Even though they might burn brightly for what seems like an unending lifetime, eventually all stars will burn out. One thing stars are not known for doing is simply disappearing without a trace. That is, until now. Recently, scientists working with the vanishing and appearing sources during a century of observations, or VASCO, compared images of the sky taken over 70 years ago to current images. Although stars do eventually burn out and fade, they have lifespans of around 10 billion years, so researchers were not expecting to see much variation between the decades-old images and the placement of stars in the current sky. Surprisingly, they identified at least 100 stars that were clearly visible in the older images that were absent from modern-day photos in results that were published in the Astronomical Journal. So, what could possibly be behind the differences noted, and what could have caused such a large number of the seemingly unchanging pinpricks of light in our night sky to disappear entirely? Well, the short answer is that the researchers are not quite sure yet, although some suspect that the solution might provide valuable information to the search for none other than extraterrestrial life, while others take a more conservative approach and hypothesize that the discrepancies were merely short-lived flashes caught on film. When stars finally come to an end, they tend to expire in a massive burst of light that we would undoubtedly be able to trace back to some point in the intervening years, meaning that there has to be some sort of intricate or astonishing explanation as to why so many stars could simply disappear without a trace. This means that uncovering the reason why these stars were able to slide peacefully from our view could potentially have major ramifications for our understanding of the cosmos that surrounds us. Currently, many believe that there may be an as-yet undiscovered way that stars perish, resulting in this quiet decline. But researchers with the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, also known as SETI, have proposed that these missing stars could possibly signify the centers of advanced alien civilizations who blocked their suns with solar panels. Although this latter reason might sound slightly far-fetched, SETI researchers concluded long ago that intelligent alien life forms wouldn't be easy to discover and might even be in a downright absurd location. Eager to solve this burning dilemma, researchers dove deeper into the data of the missing stars, cross-referencing light sources and the locations of the missing stars in order to hopefully uncover a clue as to what might have caused so many disappearances in the intervening years, and to ensure that all of the missing pinpricks were actually light sources like stars and not simply transient bursts or errors within the image. This process was a painstaking one that involved carefully studying over 24,000 discrepancies, but researchers now know that the 100 identified missing light sources were indeed not artifacts. Regardless, the answers that scientists are searching for still lie rather far off, as much more study is needed to get to the bottom of what could have caused these disappearances. Were they simply imaging anomalies, or could they point to an alien civilization or several lurking within the cosmos? Only time will tell. Back in 2006, researchers working on the detection of deep space radiation discovered anomalous radio signals coming from within our galaxy that appear to be of intelligent communication. It is theorized that the radio signals are believed to be emanating from intelligent extraterrestrial civilizations from distant planets or satellites within our Milky Way galaxy. Support for this claim comes from statistical research models of the current Big Bang radiation theories, predicting expected radio signals and radiation to be less than 1/6 the current measured output of the anomalous radio waves, with researchers giving the extraordinarily loud signal the name space roar, given its impossible-to-explain qualities. The difference between the statistical predictions and the observed predictions far exceeds 5 sigma of chance distribution and are considered anomalous to the degree of either scientifically disproving the current cosmological principle theory or is evidence of an artificial source generating massive outputs of radio waves emanating from a time during the primordial universe. So today, here at Unexplained Mysteries, in an effort to better understand the phenomenon known as the space roar, we will be going over the theories and evidence surrounding the anomalous discovery and what the research tells us about the origins of the impossible-to-explain radio waves. Thank you for watching. Back in 2006, NASA would launch a balloon-based satellite into the upper atmosphere referred to as the Absolute Radiometer for cosmology, astrophysics, and diffuse emission, also referred to as the Arcade machine by NASA scientists in charge of the mission. According to NASA researchers, the goal of the mission was to send the Arcade machine into the upper atmosphere to gather a series of readings surrounding the background radiation of the universe to use as supporting evidence for the Lambda model of the Big Bang creation period. Equipped with 7 radiometers cooled to nearly absolute zero, the Arcade instrument was considered at the time to be the most accurate detector of radiation at wavelengths only centimeters in size. After working on the balloon satellite for several years, it would be in July of 2006 that the Arcade machine would be launched from the Columbia Scientific Balloon Facility based out of Texas within the small city of Palestine to begin its primary mission of radiation detection. The balloon would reach a height of 120,000 feet, where it would maintain this height for several days as it would scan roughly 7% of the night sky during its observations. It is at around 120,000 feet that the atmosphere begins to thin sufficiently enough that the vacuum of space becomes apparent and allows for the collection of accurate raw data. While at this height, the Arcade balloon satellite would begin to collect a vast amount of anomalous data that perplexed researchers. According to the lead researcher of the mission, Alan Kogut, of NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center, the incoming data of the Arcade balloon satellite recorded ancient primordial radio waves 6 times larger than the expected amount of radio waves that were projected by the mathematical models of the early universe. As it had been theorized by the Lambda CDM model, the residual radio waves making up the cosmic radio background were believed to be 6 times smaller than what the Arcade satellite had recorded, as the only source of radio waves would have been naturally formed via red-shifting primordial stars, primordial galaxies, and possible gas clusters manipulating electromagnetic waves. Alan Kogut would later provide an interview explaining that the detected radio waves far exceeded any expected possible output, and even after several months of detailed analysis, the researchers working on the project were unable to find any explanatory source for the residual radio waves, almost an order of magnitude of greater than theorized expectations. Researchers would go so far as to rule out known radio sources such as pulsars and their fast radio bursts, as well as a large gas cluster located within the outermost halo of our galaxy, possibly causing a form of electromagnetic manipulation or gravitational lensing. Despite their best efforts, Alan Kogut and his team were unable to find any reasonable explanation for the radio waves, which were deemed to be extremely anomalous and impossible to explain with known astrophysical and cosmological theory. Another member of the Arcade research team, an American physicist by the name of Dale Fixon from the University of Maryland at College Park, the problem of the radio waves far exceeds any expected norms or possible natural source. He would later provide a statement claiming that if every model was to be taken into consideration for all possible natural sources of radio waves in the early universe, there would still not be enough radio galaxies in the universe to explain the level of residual radio waves being detected, and that some force other than radio galaxies must be responsible for the detection. Here is a direct quote taken from the NASA article surrounding the incident. "The universe really threw us a curve," Kogut says. "Instead of the faint signal we hoped to find, here was this booming noise 6 times louder than anyone had predicted. Detailed analysis ruled out an origin from primordial stars or from known radio sources, including gas in the outermost halo of our own galaxy. The source of this cosmic radio background remains a mystery. Many objects in the universe emit radio waves. In 1931, American physicist Karl Jansky first detected radio static from our own Milky Way galaxy. Similar emission from other galaxies creates a background hiss of radio noise. The problem, notes team member Dale Fixon of the University of Maryland at College Park, is that there doesn't appear to be enough radio galaxies to account for the signal Arcade detected. You'd have to pack them into the universe like sardines, he says. There wouldn't be any space left between one galaxy and the next." In 2011, researchers working on the Arcade 2 mission, which was tasked with reanalyzing the data gathered from the original 2006 Arcade flight, would come to the conclusion that the source of the radio waves had to have been coming from a yet unknown or underestimated galactic source, either originating from ancient galaxies near the dawn of the universe or from ancient residual radio waves from within our own galaxy. A published research paper led by Alan Kogut and his team would claim to have isolated a detection that was believed to have matched the projected expected radio waves generated from the early universe and the cosmic microwave background, and yet was still unable to explain the additional large amounts of residual radio waves. We have presented evidence for isotropic radio emission detected by Arcade 2 beyond what can be explained by our model of galactic emission and the unresolved emission from the known population of discrete sources. After doing several statistical sets and projecting a possible modelling error of about 10% to 50%, the detected radio waves from the 2006 Arcade 1 mission were impossible to discount, far exceeding expectations by significant margins according to their statistical models. The Arcade 2 mission would end their research paper by offering 2 possible sources for the radio waves. We conclude that the residual signature is due either to a diffuse extragalactic background of emission from discrete radio sources with properties somewhat different than the faint end of the distribution of known natural sources, or to unmodelled residual emission from our own galaxy. Although we believe the former to be more likely, we cannot exclude the latter explanation. In this explanation, the amount of radio waves and the frequency they operated on appear to be at the smallest expected end of the frequency that radio waves were expected to be distributed on by any known natural sources, appearing to have originated from unnatural or perhaps intelligent sources. Although not accepted by the scientific community and widely dismissed without substantial supporting evidence, a small minority of academia and Arcade researchers posited the theory that though the cosmological principle theory is accurate, the radio signals are indeed anomalous and could only be explained by the possibility of intelligent extraterrestrial civilizations emanating large amounts of radio waves in all directions from within our own Milky Way galaxy, or during the time of the ancient primordial universe. Even more peculiar and supporting of the extraterrestrial theory is that the discovered radio waves exist on the faint end of the expected distribution of natural radio waves, right around the 2G to 3G radio wave frequency. Not only are these specific radio frequencies completely anomalous, as no natural mechanisms are known to produce such specific frequencies, but the fact that the radio frequencies seem to directly match the modern-day radio frequencies commonly used for television, radio, and internet communication seems to imply a rather artificial nature to the discovered radio waves. This could imply that the discovered radio waves are remnants of ancient extragalactic civilizations that rose and fell during the time of the primordial universe, and their radio waves have only recently reached our planet. Even less likely, however, the radio waves could be evidence of ancient extraterrestrial civilizations from within our own galaxy, bouncing around due to gas clouds and nebulae trapping a repeating signal within the Milky Way, implying an ancient civilization several billion years old that was capable of producing our modern 3G signals more than 10 billion years in the past. Even more interesting, almost a year prior to the discovery of the radio waves, on the 5th of July back in 2005, science fiction author Charles Stross would publish his science fiction novel Accelerando, positing a theory referred to as the theory of Accelerando on the development of advanced civilizations. According to Charles Stross, he would argue that as civilizations advance, their computational power will naturally follow Moore's law, causing computers to double in their computational power every 2 years. If one follows the trajectory of Moore's law, it is inevitable that the mind of the species responsible for the computational devices will eventually be outpaced by their own technology's computational power. In this regard, for the species to continue their line of efficiency and maintain Moore's law, they would be required to artificially enhance their own intelligence in a way that directly matches with their expected computational growth. Although it is theoretically possible for a species to genetically enhance their intelligence through gene editing, Charles Stross argues the inevitable conclusion of a species slowly forming symbiotic connections with technology in ever-increasing dependencies. In this sense, the theory of El Accelerando postulates that the inevitable technological evolution of an alien race is in the total conversion of consciousness into computational function. By converting their consciousness into an artificial intelligence hosted on computational devices, any species would be able to both match their computational power while increasing their own intellectual evolution. At the rate of humanity's technological progress, Charles Stross believed that in the next few decades, humans would begin to offload memories onto cloud-based servers and eventually copy entire conscious mechanisms into a physics-based computational engine to copy their minds down into computational devices. If Charles Stross's theory of Accelerando is accurate, it could be that ancient extraterrestrial civilizations have also accomplished such a feat countless millennia in the past, and their entire consciousness is being transmitted and shared across a galactic scale, being sent throughout solar systems at the speed of light to technological computational-based societies. Stross argues that computational societies would no longer need physical matter such as planets, food and water to survive, but would only need the conversion of pure energy and the construction of computational devices existing entirely in a cyberspace around harvested stars. Such evidence of massive artificial constructions orbiting stars for harvesting energy has been detected and argued after the discovery of Tabby's star, an anomalous star believed to have an anomalous orbiting body atypical of naturally formed celestial bodies. In this regard, the discovery of the radio waves 6 times larger than the expected output modeled by the current Lambda CDM model could be evidence of an ancient galactic internet connection stretching across the stars, connected by radio signals sharing data and pure alien consciousness traveling through the galaxy at the speed of light. Given the fact that NASA appears to be interested in isolating the space raw signal to an incredibly accurate degree, having the Arcade 2 team model any expected natural radio waves and removing them from the data to get a pure space raw signal, it could mean that the National Aeronautics and Space Administration already believes the signal to have an intelligent origin that could potentially be deciphered. Charles Stross would argue towards the end of his novel that ancient galactic civilizations that did follow the theory of accelerando would openly transmit instructions to emerging civilizations on how to connect to the galactic signal to allow connections to different planets across the stars. This could mean that such a signal is already being studied and deciphered by NASA in the modern day. Oddly enough, despite making superficial media headlines, conspiracy theorists believe that NASA has made several attempts to cover up the space raw anomaly by dismissing the radio wave data as a possible modeling error while artificially inflating their expected natural distribution of statistics to make the recovered data seem far less anomalous than it truly is. According to the Arcade 2, the mission led back in 2011 with the primary purpose of analysing the data recovered from the 2006 Arcade flight. The researchers were tasked with making several different models of slight variations and assuming a 50% modelling error with any data within 2 sigmas of significance to be dismissed. Despite this extremely wide margin of error, researchers were still unable to dismiss the anomalous radio waves that far exceeded the distribution significance. In no other cosmological model would a 50% modelling error, with data independently confirmed from 2 separate sources, be considered a reasonable practice, lending credence to the possible cover-up theory. Additionally, any data and research surrounding the 2006 Arcade findings would not be made public for several years following the mission, when the Arcade 2 mission paper was finally published back in 2011. Mysterious cosmic object swallowed by black hole. Black holes are confusing enough at the best of times. To see existence as we know it break down as matter interacts with the event horizon is a scary thing. But we are still continuing to find out more baffling things about black holes that can send shivers down even the most hardened scientist's spine. One of the more recent and perplexing pieces of info about these giant celestial holes comes from 2020, when a blip flashed on the equipment of the Laser Interferometer Gravitational Wave Observatory. What the LIGO had detected had happened roughly 800 million light-years away from Earth. It was a black hole. Of course, this is nothing particularly spectacular, but what intrigued researchers was described by National Geographic as a wrinkle in space-time. The black hole had swallowed something, the researchers unsure of what, and the resulting convergence of energy sent wrinkles across space-time. These wrinkles were actually gravitational waves which spanned across the universe and eventually hit Earth on the 14th of August 2019. It was on that day in August that LIGO's sensitive detectors were able to record the event. It stands out among many thousands of other recorded events in space, and it has left scientists baffled at what exactly the black hole ate up. The collision, now named GW190814, involved 2 objects: a black hole with the same mass 23 times that of our Sun, and a mystery object which was around 2.6 times the mass of our Sun. We haven't seen with confidence anything like this before, said Vicky Calagera of Northwestern University in regards to GW190814. So what do we know about the object? Well, scientists state that it exists somewhere between a traditional celestial body with a surface, like a star, and a matter-sucking black hole. The mass of the mystery object, as stated by National Geographic, places it between the heaviest known neutron stars and the lightest black holes. Researchers are currently attempting to understand where exactly neutron stars end and black holes begin. It is perhaps in this relationship where our mystery object belongs. Understanding this extreme behavior in the universe can unravel an immense amount of knowledge. What's more is that as the universe ages, there may be nothing in existence other than these kinds of end-stage objects as most stars burn out. If it's a neutron star, it's an exciting mass for a neutron star. If it's a black hole, it's an exciting mass for a black hole, Calagera says. Either way, it perked up our antennas the moment we saw it. Voyager 2 message. 40 years after its mission launch, NASA spacecraft Voyager 2 sent a message back to scientists on Earth, which has now been decoded. Being the longest-running space mission to date, the faint signal sent back to Earth is truly incredible and has provided the most detailed look yet at the edge of our solar system. The message was initially relayed back to us after Voyager 2 crossed a boundary in space which marks the edge of the Sun's reach and the start of true interstellar space. This is no easy feat, as this elusive boundary lies a whopping 12 billion miles from Earth. Voyager 2 is only the second ever spacecraft to ever travel beyond the depths of the heliosphere. In other words, the bubble of supersonic charged particles emitted outwards by the Sun. Voyager 1 beat it out of the heliosphere by 6 years, despite being launched a month after Voyager 2, as the latter took a somewhat more scenic route through the solar system. The recently decrypted signal is not the only pearl of wisdom to have come from Voyager 2, as its 6-year detour also provided us with the only ever captured close-up photos of Uranus and Neptune. What makes all this data so much more incredible is that scientists never expected Voyager 2 to make it this far and survive quite so long in the outermost depths of space. Professor Edward Stone of the California Institute of Technology has been working on the mission since before its launch in 1977, and described just how much of an achievement it was that the NASA spacecraft reached this landmark and beyond, explaining that scientists were not quite sure just how large the bubble of particles was. The exact nature of the heliosphere up until recently has not been definitively understood. However, its boundary-like nature was confirmed by Voyager 1 after observing a drastic temperature difference upon passing out of the bubble. The temperature drop is now known to be caused by warmer particles from the Sun meeting an interstellar wind, blowing towards this boundary from supernovae which exploded millions of years ago. The longevity displayed by Voyager 2 goes to show the steady advancements being made in spacecraft technologies and opens doors for so many more future discoveries to be made further in space than we have previously imagined. Meteoroid has hit the James Webb telescope. With all the new developments occurring in the world of astronomy, there are sure to be setbacks, however small they might be. Recently, the James Webb telescope was damaged by a micrometeoroid that has caused noticeable effects on the instrument's data, although not enough to limit the mission's goals. The telescope's predecessor, the Hubble Space Telescope, has been growing old for some time, having been launched more than 30 years ago. James Webb was launched in December of 2021 with the purpose of succeeding Hubble. Despite the recent mishap, NASA claims that James Webb's first images, due to be released on the 12th of July, will not be affected. Analysis of the accident showed that a mirror segment called C3 was struck between the 23rd and 25th of May. C3 is part of the gold tiles that make up the telescope's primary reflector. According to NASA, the accident caused a dimple in C3 as, while the telescope was only hit by a small micrometeoroid, the speed at which objects move in space means that even tiny objects can cause fairly significant damage. In the 6 months since James Webb was launched, the telescope had already been hit 5 times, although this most recent blow was the largest. While the Hubble telescope's mirrors were guarded by a tubular baffle, James Webb has an open design, making it more susceptible to these types of mishaps. The designers of this spacecraft were not unaware of the possibility that James Webb would be hit by space objects. According to Paul Geithner, a NASA project manager, the team always knew that Webb would have to weather the space environment, which includes harsh ultraviolet light and charged particles from the Sun, cosmic rays from exotic sources in the galaxy, and occasional strikes by micrometeoroids within our solar system. Scientists designed James Webb with its optical, electrical, mechanical, and thermal performance in mind, ensuring it could perform many missions after numerous years in space, just like its predecessor. There continues to be high hopes for James Webb, as scientists hope to use the telescope to capture the first stars from more than 13.5 billion years ago. They also intend to use the telescope to locate planets that may be habitable. Luckily, this minor setback will not inhibit these ambitious plans. NASA releases brilliant image of star from James Webb Space Telescope. There was great excitement at the end of 2021 as the James Webb Space Telescope launched from Europe's spaceport in Kourou, French Guiana. But as much excitement as there was also a great deal of nerves, as experts anxiously waited to see if all of the work, effort and money that was invested would pay off. Fortunately, the launch went incredibly well, and on March 16, 2022, the James Webb Space Telescope reached an incredible milestone. NASA shared with the world the first image taken from the James Webb Space Telescope after the focus had been sharpened. This is designed to help us study and investigate some of the earliest galaxies out there in the universe. The first shot taken, following adjustments, features the bright orange star with the snappy name 2 Mass J17554042655127. In the background of this stunning view are several galaxies we are yet to identify. Officials report that the telescope is doing far better than the minimum requirements, and so the astronomical community is buzzing with hopes for some amazing new discoveries to be just upon the horizon. The next step is to characterize the sharpness of the images that Webb is taking. While more aligning is needed, the telescope is well on its way to exceeding our expectations. We cannot wait to see what is yet to come. James Webb Telescope to study icy space objects in the Kuiper Belt. The Kuiper Belt is a mysterious ring of icy objects that circles just outside of Neptune's orbit and often serves as a theoretical border of our known world. Although there are certainly bodies that we have studied extensively beyond this perimeter, all the 8 planets thus far identified and carefully catalogued in the Milky Way are within the borders of the Kuiper Belt, including former planet Pluto and its moon Charon. The belt's distance and the proliferation of icy foreign bodies presents a challenge to researchers wishing to study its secrets, but that has not stopped many from trying. In fact, researchers working with the James Webb Space Telescope have set their sights on the Kuiper Belt and the trans-Neptunian objects that rotate in and beyond, including Pluto and Charon. Along the way, they hope to also get closer looks at objects known as centaurs, or bodies that used to orbit within the Kuiper Belt but now have been pulled closer to Earth. Many of these centaurs now reside in the region between Jupiter and Neptune, likely including Neptune's moon Triton, and provide much closer and clearer examples of Kuiper Belt objects. But why would researchers be so keen to get a glimpse at this formation at the outer edges of our world? For starters, even the smallest clue can help scientists to continue to piece together the puzzle about how our universe was formed and how it evolved into the mysterious and incredibly complex world that we know today. The Kuiper Belt is a perfect candidate for hidden clues because of the incredible variety of objects that circle within its limits. Different orbits, atmospheres, colours, sizes, shapes, and geologic activity make it pretty much any astronomer's dream. Previous attempts to get a closer look at these bodies have been largely uninformative, but the James Webb Space Telescope possesses much more sensitive infrared cameras that will hopefully be able to get a better glimpse at the variety beyond Neptune. Jonathan Lunin, an astronomer working with the Webb team, described the plethora of icy objects in the Kuiper Belt as the graveyard of solar system formation, with some objects having likely been in orbit for billions upon billions of years. Analysis of these objects will hopefully be able to provide valuable data about what the world might have looked like in its formative years, which we currently do not have very clear-cut ideas about. Heidi Hamel, with the Webb interdisciplinary team, said that using Webb, we will be able to get information about surface chemistry that might be able to give us some clues into why there are these different populations in the Kuiper Belt. Hopefully, the James Webb Telescope will provide information and the clearer image into the depths of the Milky Way that astronomers have been in search of for years, and there is no telling what mysteries will be uncovered then. NASA to test catapult that flings objects into space at 5,000 miles per hour. Improvements in space accessibility are expected due to NASA's plan to catapult objects into space at 5,000 miles per hour with the help of a company called Spin Launch. Spin Launch is a startup that was founded in 2014 with the aim of enabling rapid and lower-cost deployments of satellites into low Earth orbit. The company is backed by an impressive team of high-profile supporters, including Airbus Ventures, Google Ventures, and Kleiner Perkins. The team hopes to begin its first orbital test flight in 2025 with the suborbital accelerator launch system they are developing. This launch system will rotate a carbon fiber arm at hypersonic speeds of about 5,000 miles per hour. All this will happen within a steel vacuum chamber with a diameter of about 300 feet. The high speeds will propel a launch vehicle that contains a satellite into the sky, and a small propulsion will then be needed to reach the necessary orbit position once the vehicle is above the stratosphere. The vehicle is expected to orbit faster than most rockets. These innovative plans could change the nature of space accessibility as we know it. The launch system is expected to lessen the cost, time, and complexity of space exploration, making it possible to explore space more than we ever have before. According to Spin Launch, the launch system does not require any advances in technology or material science and can be created using the materials and hardware that already exist today. Jonathan Yaney, the CEO of Spin Launch, has stated that what started as an innovative idea to make space more accessible has materialized into a technically mature and game-changing approach to launch. Test launches are already underway, beginning with a test flight of the launch system that occurred in October of 2021 from Spaceport America in New Mexico. This first launch propelled a vehicle at high speeds and the reusable flight vehicle was recovered. Since then, the team has launched objects into the sky at almost 1,000 miles per hour, although none have reached orbit yet. Spin Launch will continue testing throughout 2022 with regular test flights at different velocities and with varying types of vehicles. If the launch is successful, access to space will increase exponentially, giving scientists more opportunities to study the sky above. Building blocks of life found in famous Mars meteorite. Many topics in science, particularly astrophysics, have been part of long debates and discussions. Mars is no exception. There have been conversations for decades as to whether Mars could hold life, or if it ever had the potential to be home to life in its past. Scientists have found ice, but they have also found an inhospitable environment, followed by the discovery of small craters where life could plausibly survive. This seesaw of a debate has swung back and forth over the years, with many believing that even if there isn't life on the red planet anymore, that there may have been life on Mars during the ancient Noachian period. Though 2020 research into a famous meteorite could give one more point to the "there was once life on Mars" argument. Allen Hills 84001, also referred to as ALH 84001, is a well-known Mars meteorite found in the Allen Hills in Antarctica in 1984. Research conducted on it in more recent years has revealed that the 4 billion-year-old Martian meteorite contains organic molecules that support life on Earth as we know it today. These molecules contain carbon, often referred to as one of the building blocks of life, which not only supports all life on Earth, but aids temperature regulation of the planet and is a key component in plenty of food sources. Not only has carbon been confirmed to be within ALH 84001, but nitrogen has too, and it was found within carbonate minerals. Carbonate minerals are commonly formed in groundwater, suggesting that what is now known to be ice was once water on Mars. This presents the image of a Mars that, long ago, was habitable. A whole host of fantastic research projects over the years have helped to fill in the blanks and provide knowledge that can support and deny these ideas. For example, NASA's Curiosity Mars rover observed ancient native organics as well as a lake and stream system by the Gale crater. Whilst these may not mean much in terms of life today, when you combine these details with the minerals found in the meteorite, the idea that Mars was once habitable becomes much more supported. These claims have been made before, with ALH 84001 being used as evidence back in 1996. This team, led by Dave Mackay from NASA's Johnson Space Center, gave 4 lines of evidence, including carbonate globules and organic molecules. However, it was pointed out that these conclusions were fairly presumptuous. Abiotic factors, meaning non-living factors, could have also caused these molecules, not exclusively living things. Despite this criticism, the authors of the study continue to support their conclusions and assessments. The new study took a different approach, however. Led by Mizuo Koki from the Institute of Space and Astronautical Science at the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency, the 2020 study used precise analytics to make their conclusions, including an X-ray spectroscopy to find traces of nitrogen and pinpoint it to the carbonate minerals within ALH 84001. In any other observations of ALH 84001, nobody had seen any nitrogen. This groundbreaking discovery has been explained as scientists believe that the organics were trapped in the carbonate about 4 billion years ago. Much like the original study, there are still abiotic factors that could cause this occurrence, and nitrogen does not necessarily determine that there was once life on Mars. However, these highly advanced techniques drastically reduce terrestrial contamination, limiting some confounding variables. We still do not know if there was ever life on Mars, but we have discovered a new piece to the puzzle, and it is certainly worth considering. We may live in a massive cosmic void. In 2013, the University of Wisconsin-Madison's astronomer Amy Barger and her student Ryan Keegan made an interesting discovery. They found that the density of our nearby universe is lower than that of other parts. The density of the universe is largely uniform. However, if you break the universe up into smaller parts, it begins to look a lot like a block of Swiss cheese. These smaller parts have certain sections that are very densely packed and others that are more sparsely populated. Research suggests that Earth sits squarely in one of these barer sections, hence the suggestion that if the universe is a big block of Swiss cheese, Earth sits in one of its holes. In fact, one of Amy Barger's students, Ben Hoscheit, presented new research at a meeting of the American Astronomical Society. Hoscheit looked at disparities in measures of the Hubble constant, the number we use to describe the rate at which the universe is growing. Since it describes the condition of our universe, Hubble's constant is expected to stay the same throughout the universe. However, Hoscheit found an important difference. To get a local measurement, he found Hubble's constant by analyzing the movement of relatively close Type 1a supernovas. To get a cosmic measurement, he used cosmic microwave background radiation, leftovers from the Big Bang. Hoscheit believes that the massive void theory, also known as the Swiss cheese theory, may be to blame for the disparity in Hubble's constant, saying the constant is higher using the supernova method. This is in accordance with how we would expect a void to affect the Hubble constant. Gravity from higher density areas is pulling things out of the void at a faster rate than we would otherwise expect. Surprisingly, the astronomical research community seems to be in agreement on the massive void theory. Researchers believe that this particular void is 7 times bigger than any other void they have ever measured, and our galaxy is a few 100 million light-years away from the void's center. Surely, such findings serve to remind us once again how minuscule we are in the context of the universe. Even so, this relatively new theory brings us a step closer to understanding how our universe is built, structured, and designed, and it may help us solve other mysteries in the future. Kepler 70b is hotter than our Sun. We have several methods that we can use to track down exoplanets using varying techniques and equipment. Some of these methods include relying on radial velocity, planetary transits, gravitational microlensing, and pulsar timing. These can all get the job done and clue us in to just where we might find an exoplanet lying, though some methods are easier to use and generally more reliable, namely using planetary transits. Whilst NASA's Transiting Exoplanet Survey satellite is perhaps the main satellite doing the job, it was by no means the first technology of its kind set up to track planetary transits. Back in 2009, NASA launched the now retired Kepler Space Telescope specifically to look for exoplanets roughly the same size as Earth. The telescope uses a photometer to assess how bright stars are. This can be helpful as when a star has regular dips in how bright it is, it can show a planet passing in front of the star in its orbit, indicating that there is indeed an exoplanet orbiting the star. Now, astronomers are able to take this research one step further and use the specific details and small changes in the light to figure out all sorts of information about the candidate planet, including the mass, the speed, the size, and the orbit. This is a useful process, and it is not foolproof as there are other occurrences that can result in the momentarily dimmed brightness of a star, such as sunspots or asteroids passing in front. Overall, the Kepler Space Telescope was a success, mapping out the location of 2,662 exoplanets during its lifetime, from 2009 until 2018. One of the systems confirmed to be found by the Kepler Space Telescope was Kepler 70b, a small planetary system. This had a subdwarf B star, Kepler 70, with two exoplanets, Kepler 70b and Kepler 70c, orbiting it. These exoplanets are both gas giants, not unlike Saturn or Jupiter in our own solar system. Of these two exoplanets, one has been discussed and spoken of much more frequently. We have tried to find conditions like Earth. We have found some far more extreme on Kepler 70b. Let us delve into why Kepler 70b has conditions quite as extreme as it does. The answer lies in the exoplanet's past. The Kepler 70 star was once a main sequence star, albeit 18.4 million years ago, as it turned into a red giant stage of the star life cycle. The star pulled the two planets in, engulfing them, swallowing them. We do not know how the two exoplanets somehow managed to survive this experience, or whether or not they had an impact upon the star itself. What we do know, however, is that somehow, against all odds, there are two exoplanets that have had any sort of atmosphere they might have once had torn away and are left as two burning hot cores. The sky-high temperatures of Kepler 70b, due to the lack of atmosphere, the incredibly close distance to its host star Kepler 70, the hot conditions of Kepler 70 itself, and its orbit taking just 345 minutes compared to Earth's 365 days, all make it clear that there is not likely life lurking on this exoplanet. The conditions of this exoplanet are fascinating. Exoplanets might only seem interesting when they may contain life. To gain more of an insight into how the different planets and stars without our universe has formed is invaluable information. Scientists are using the moon as a giant mirror to search for aliens. The hunt for aliens has a new development, as the moon has been employed as a mirror in the search for a planet that could be home to life. The Hubble Space Telescope has been able to photograph and record the light that reflected off of the moon after it had travelled through the Earth's atmosphere. NASA's aims to study this reflection and look for characteristics that come from the Earth's atmosphere, as we know Earth is, of course, a habitable planet. By comparing this reflection to other planets' reflections, we may be able to determine if the same features, characteristics, and chemical combinations are present in other atmospheres. These atmospheres then have the potential to be habitable. This should indicate to scientists which exoplanets warrant further research as to whether or not they contain alien life. When searching for extraterrestrial life, scientists have begun to limit the search to Earth-like exoplanets, meaning planets that are similar to our own in regard to size, temperature, and distance from the host star and the rocky surface. Whilst it is still difficult to differentiate between exoplanets with rough atmospheres or those that may be habitable, the new moon mirror technique may aid this research. The study published in the Astronomical Journal by Youngblood details this development in astrophysics. Here, the unique characteristics that are being looked for elsewhere are referred to as the chemical signature. The research team measured the ozone in the Earth's atmosphere. Similar levels in exoplanets exhibiting a close chemical signature to our own could suggest a planet that has plenty of oxygen and has a UV protectant atmosphere like our own Earth. Both of these components could indicate life. Astronomers discover massive galaxy shipyard. Scientists may soon have the opportunity to study how galaxies form clusters after their creation. In a 2021 publication, a team of researchers confirmed the discovery of a protocluster, which refers to a group of galaxies about to group together by the European Space Agency's Planck telescope. The team was able to discover the protocluster by looking through a sample of over 2,000 formations that were potentially in the process of forming a galaxy group. Galaxy clusters are extremely important. Our own solar system, the Milky Way, is part of a cluster called the local group. However, studying protoclusters is difficult because they cannot be detected by optical light. To find them, scientists must look to other regions of the electromagnetic spectrum. Protoclusters tend to appear far more prominently in sub-millimeter wavelengths. The newfound galaxy group, which has been identified as the G237 protocluster, was observed in the far infrared region. G237 is 11 billion light-years away from Earth. So far, 63 galaxies have been observed as part of the protocluster. As explained by Brenda Fry, co-author of the study, you can think of galaxy protoclusters such as G237 as a galaxy shipyard in which massive galaxies are being assembled. Only this structure existed at a time when the universe was 3 billion years old. Galaxies are created when gravity pulls together stars and other matter. After they are assembled, galaxies show a strong tendency to form clusters. Researchers were initially puzzled by the formation processes of the G237 protocluster. It seemed to be forming stars at an unrealistic rate, more than 10,000 times that of the Milky Way. This should indicate a protocluster that is depleting stellar fuel rapidly. To sustain its level of production, G237 needed a constant stream of fuel, in the form of hydrogen gas, which is necessary to form stars. The problem was that scientists did not know where it could be getting this gas. Ultimately, it was concluded that sufficient hydrogen could be drawn from gas threads, called filaments, that link galaxies in the cosmic web. Filaments are connected by nodes, which is also where protoclusters are located. Fry stated, "We believe that the filaments mediate the transfer of hydrogen gas from the diffuse medium of intergalactic space onto these hungry, newly forming protoclusters in the nodes." Researchers also realized some of their data had come from galaxies irrelevant to the protocluster, but the G237 star formation rate remains impressive nonetheless. It appears that the protocluster produces 1,000 solar masses annually, while the Milky Way creates only one. Hopefully, G237 and other protoclusters will help scientists understand the mechanisms of star formation in galaxies and how protoclusters ultimately become superclusters. Lunar rover discovers mysterious glass spheres. China's Yutu-2 rover has been the force behind several recent discoveries regarding the dark side of the moon, and its latest find is especially intriguing. The mission, which was the first successful landing on the far side of the moon, has been to uncover hidden secrets kept by the far side of the moon by looking in depth at panoramic images captured by the rover, which was deposited in the moon's massive von Karman crater. One of these images, which proved especially interesting to researchers after they noticed two small intact spheres made of what appeared to be translucent glass. The knowledge that glass spheres were discovered on the moon might alone be surprising information to some. The fact is that glass is not altogether uncommon on the lunar surface. The ingredients needed to create glass are rather simple, just silicate and high temperatures, and the moon has had a large amount of both throughout its lifetime. We know that the moon was the site of extensive volcanism in the past, as well as the location of intense heat generated by meteorites and other foreign bodies. Silicate, which is found all over the lunar surface, was subject to this volcanic activity and high temperatures, resulting in the large amount of glass pieces that can be found across the surface. So, if glass is not rare on the Moon, why are these spheres of such interest to the researchers studying U-22's images? The answer lies in what the glass can tell us about the history of the Moon and the chemical reactions that have occurred. There is a chance that the volcanic activity that led to the other glass remnants also created these spheres. They do appear to be slightly different from other specimens that have been found. Of the previous specimens, any spheres that were discovered were almost microscopic and none measured over a millimeter compared to U-22 spheres, which measure between 15 and 25 millimeters in diameter. They also range from transparent to semi-transparent with an interesting vitreous luster. But how did these strange orbs end up on the Moon? One theory claims that the spheres are impact spheres, which are created even here on Earth when something hits the surface so forcefully that it generates enough heat to melt the crust. The melted pieces are projected into the air by the impact and cool into tiny glass beads. These beads are usually incredibly small, which likely rules impact out as a direct source of U-22's glass spheres. The team studying the images and U-22's analysis of their composition believe that they are likely created from a type of volcanic glass called anorthosite, which might have remelted due to the heat of an enormous impact and then cooled into the balls that the rover discovered. The team responsible for the research wrote, "As the first discovery of macroscopic and translucent glass globules on the Moon, this study predicts that such globules should be abundant across the lunar highland, providing promising sampling targets to reveal the early impact history of the Moon. As research continues, hopefully we will begin to be able to peel back the layers of the Moon's history and discover more about its formation and life through the millennia." SpaceX satellites disrupting ability to spot asteroids. Elon Musk's SpaceX satellites are disrupting our human ability to spot asteroids in the night sky. But what's the big deal? The issue is, the asteroids that are being obstructed from viewpoint could be fatal, wreaking havoc on the Earth without us being able to detect them. Astronomers have for a long time now known that our increasing additions of satellites in the skies are making it more and more difficult for them to carry out their observations over recent years. They recently found that SpaceX satellites are blocking their views from screening asteroids which could be headed to our dear planet Earth. Worsening this is SpaceX's plans to launch up to tens of thousands more satellites into space in the near future, having already launched more than 2,000. Commenting on the case, astronomers have said that for now this problem is minor and comparable to difficulties faced during periods of bad weather and visibility. As man-made additions to the cosmos seem to set to increase exponentially in coming years, it could reach a dangerous point quite quickly. This said, SpaceX do seem to be listening to astronomers' concerns. In 2020, the company invested in prototyping and testing sun visors for their satellites to reduce artificially caused sun glare back down to Earth, and with fair success. The visors did turn out to be effective, reducing the original brightness levels down to a fifth of what they would have been. While efforts are being made in the right direction, astronomers still worry about the growing magnitude of the problem. In 2019, only 0.5 of their asteroid observations were affected by SpaceX satellites' glares, causing streaky images. By 2021, this has jumped massively to 20% of images. The satellites themselves are also launched with good intentions, that is to provide faster and better quality Wi-Fi to remote struggling areas. We must question whether these benefits really outweigh the costs of preventing observation of asteroids heading to Earth. Hubble telescope captures violent merger of 3 galaxies. Because of the infinite vastness of space, things colliding with each other is not an altogether common experience, but when things do strike, it usually results in a massive, high-energy, attraction-fueled cosmic fireworks show of sorts. Recently, NASA's Hubble Space Telescope was able to capture amazing images of the imminent collision of three galaxies, collectively called ARP 195 and located within the Lynx constellation 763 million light-years away from Earth. The three galaxies have been in a complicated gravitational battle for many years, as the strongest of the three siphons off energy from the other two and draws them together in a spiraling path bound for collision. They are named as one partially because they will eventually become one and are connected by their powerful gravitational connection, which can be seen in the dusty band of debris, cosmic gas, and even stars that connect the three galaxies, as the largest pulls this material in towards its center. But what will it look like when they inevitably crash into each other for good? Instead of smashing and scattering into pieces as one might expect from such a powerful conflict, the cosmic collision will only strengthen the individual galaxies as they join together to form one large, unified galaxy. This new transformation will result in the abrupt creation of a vast sea of material waste from the violent merger, which will collect into new stars that will join the old ones that survived the impact and resulting condensation. What is even more amazing about these images is the fact that they provided astronomers with front row seats to a glimpse into what is likely going to be in our own very, very distant future, as scientists with the European Space Agency have predicted that in about 4.5 billion years, the Milky Way will merge with the Andromeda Galaxy in what will likely be a very similar collision to the one that was captured by the Hubble Space Telescope. These mergers are massive examples of the raw power contained within the bounds of the universe. They are not rare or isolated occurrences, and are in fact the generating force behind all large galaxies, even the Milky Way. Observing firsthand these jaw-dropping changes that are constantly occurring within the cosmos all around us is one of the best ways that researchers have come to understand how our universe came to be and what it might evolve into in the future. Luckily, we have several billion years between now and our own eventual galactic merger. But being able to watch as three galaxies undergo such massive transformations is still a jaw-dropping experience that can provide valuable information about the amazing space that surrounds us. One of the oldest stars in the galaxy has a planet. Our universe took a lot of evolving and developing to get where it is today. So it is somewhat strange when we find aspects that we know are not that old existing in the early days of the universe. In the early universe, we simply did not have all the scientific elements that we have today. The elements needed to form rocky planets did not exist, yet despite this, astronomers have found, right here in the Milky Way galaxy, a rocky planet dating back further than you would expect. A little bit of an astronomical timeline is needed here to form this picture. The Big Bang took place, resulting in an abundance of the light elements in the universe, hydrogen, helium, and a smaller amount of lithium. About 200 million years following the Big Bang, stars began to form, and along with them, heavier elements developed in the cores of stars, including carbon, oxygen, and iron. Now, for rocky planets to form, we need those materials from the cores of stars, so we should not be able to find rocky planets in the early days of the universe. These planets should, instead, be gaseous like Jupiter. There is one planet that is being looked at in this study. It has been found orbiting TOI 561, a star that is an approximate 10 billion years old and is one of the oldest in our galaxy. This planet was found through the Transiting Exoplanet Survey satellite and then observed more closely using the Keck telescope. This star is part of the galactic thick disk, an area of the galaxy made almost exclusively out of ancient stars, giving it a unique chemical composition. The stars in the so-called thick disk are much less metallic than in the thin disk, adding even more surprise to the discovery that it is indeed a rocky planet orbiting the star. The planet named TOI 561b was first found when it moved in front of the star it orbits. This process stopped the shine of the star for a moment, meaning the light dipped and Tess could see the planet lurking just in front of the star. After this, the next step was to gather information on the planet. Not only is it rocky, but it has a mass 3 times that of the Earth's, adding more evidence to the belief that this is a rocky planet, not a gaseous one. TOI 561b is not the only planet to orbit this old star though, but the other two are confirmed to be gaseous, not rocky. It might take some time to continue this research and unravel this mystery, though it appears that something is different than how we currently understand it, whether that is the timeline of our universe, the composition of this planet, or the elements needed to form them. A spiral arm break in the Milky Way. During the summer of 2021, astronomers discovered an unusual break within our galaxy's spiral arms. They found that some of our stars located about 4,000 light-years away from Earth jut out at a different angle to their arm. This discovery was not a surprise to the experts, though. While they had no idea it existed, they also understand that there is much that they do not yet know about our galaxy. It is difficult for astronomers to get a complete picture of the Milky Way when it surrounds them. The break occurs in the Sagittarius arm of our galaxy, which is the portion of the sky that we look at when gazing at the Sagittarius and Serpens Cauda constellations. Although astronomers have seen similar breaks within spiral arms of other galaxies in the universe, it is the first known structure within the Milky Way. The splintered portion extends out for nearly 3,000 light-years from the main arm and contains some of the most famous nebulae and stars of the Milky Way. The Omega, Trifid, Lagoon, and Eagle Nebula are all located within this broken portion, the latter of which is most famous for the Hubble Space Telescope's Pillars of Creation photo. A group of astronomers used data collected from NASA's Spitzer Space Telescope and ESA's Gaia mission to calculate the distances of stars within the nebulae. Distance is usually one of the most challenging things to figure out in space, but the information from Gaia has enabled scientists to measure near precise lengths and uncover this new structure. With NASA's telescope's infrared vision, they could measure the young stars typically hidden in the nebula. Led by Alberto Crone Martins, a professor from the University of California, Irvine, the scientists combined the data to create a three-dimensional map of the stars. Astronomers published their findings in the July issue of the peer-reviewed science journal Astronomy and Astrophysics. They determined that the spiral arm break contains young stars moving in the same direction through space at nearly the same velocity. Additionally, the break has a pitch angle of almost 60 degrees, while the Sagittarius arm has an angle of 12 degrees. The pitch angle is used to measure how tightly the arms of the spiral galaxy are wound. As the arms of the spiral open up, the degree increases. If the spiral is so tightly wound that it creates a circle, the pitch would be 0 degrees. Scientists still do not know the exact cause of these arm breaks within the Milky Way or other galaxies. Likely, the young stars within the break formed simultaneously, so measuring them and their movement will assist the researchers and help them better understand these breaks. Other forces, like gravity and the galaxy's spin, also play a role. The astronomers were not shocked to discover this spiral arm break, but are excited to continue learning about it. They believe that understanding these small details will paint a more extensive understanding of our galaxy as a whole. They will continue to study data from the telescopes and analyze the stars within the Sagittarius arm to hopefully learn something new and significant about the large-scale structures of the Milky Way. Astronomers detect secret water reserves in the solar system's largest canyon. Valles Marineris, also known as the Grand Canyon of Mars, is the largest canyon in our solar system. But Valles Marineris attracts scientific curiosity for more than just its size. The 2,485-mile-long canyon system may also be home to hidden reserves of water. Recent data from an instrument known as the ESA Roscosmos ExoMars Trace Gas Orbiter's Friend shows abnormal hydrogen levels below Mars's surface. Unlike previous instruments, FRIEND, which stands for Fine Resolution Epithermal Neutron Detector, can detect neutrons up to a meter below the surface of Mars. According to physicist Alexei Malakov, neutrons are produced when highly energetic particles known as galactic cosmic rays strike Mars. Low neutron levels indicate the presence of hydrogen. Because dry soil emits more neutrons than wet soil, the number of neutrons emitted by soil beneath Mars's surface can indicate levels of water. Between May 2018 and February 2021, Friend collected the data that indicates high concentrations of subsurface hydrogen. It suggests that soil up to a meter deep in the Valles Marineris region contains water that is either locked inside minerals or ice. Because it is unusual for minerals in this region to contain large amounts of water, experts believe that water ice near the surface is the more probable explanation. If the hydrogen is truly forming water molecules, this suggests that water makes up to 40% of the area close to the surface in the region. This watery area is roughly the size of the Netherlands. This discovery is unexpected, as the pressure and temperature around the Mars equator does not create a suitable environment for large stores of water. The presence of water in Valles Marineris suggests unusual conditions, possibly relating to the angle of its slopes. The water may also be sitting in scattered ancient deposits. This discovery of water is fascinating because of its surprising location, but this is not the first reserve found on the planet. It appears that the majority of water on Mars exists in the poles in the form of ice. The warmth surrounding the equator prevents the formation of ice at many latitudes. Water on Mars is typically found at higher latitudes, but this recent finding suggests it can be located under the surface as well. The watery region of Valles Marineris is abundant despite unfavorable conditions at the equator. Because of this, it has been compared to the permafrost regions of Earth, where ice is constantly present underneath the dry soil due to lower temperatures. It is still unclear exactly why water has been able to form near the Mars equator and what form that water takes. Understanding the form and conditions of this water may lead to even more important discoveries. This water could expand the possibilities for exploration on Mars. Space crew would likely land around the equator, and accessible water close to the surface could mean greater survival capabilities for the crew. If the water exists in a permafrost-like state, it could contain frozen microorganisms or signs of previous life in the form of organic molecules. And if this water is only a meter below the surface, signs of life on Mars might not be so difficult to come by after all. Galaxy is missing all of its dark matter, and scientists cannot explain it. Current theories predict that sparse galaxies simply must be held together by dark matter, as there are no other explanations as to their internal structure if this is not the case. Therefore, when astronomers found a distant galaxy that appears to contain not a single trace of dark matter, existing dark matter theories were thrown into chaos. The galaxy is called AGC 114905 and sits roughly 250 million light-years away from Earth. It is almost as large as the Milky Way in size, however, contains roughly 1,000 times fewer stars than our own galaxy. Being so sparsely populated with stars, it begs the question what else makes up this galaxy to hold it together. Scientists have had to rule out dark matter, which supposedly makes up 85% of all matter in the universe, after measuring the galaxy with the Very Large Array and finding no traces of dark matter present. A fluke, you say? The research team coordinating the study found the results odd, and even after repeating data collections and spending 40 hours measuring the galaxy with one of the world's strongest radio telescopes, results kept coming in negative for dark matter. While the research team is pleased that their results have been consistent all along, it does disprove previous theories that similarly sparse galaxies were held together by dark matter. In fact, they later went on to say that the difference between theory and observation is only getting bigger. Their studying of this particular galaxy was no accident. Previous glances at AGC 114905 suggested it lacked the expected dark matter, and it is not the first evidence that similar galaxies with absolutely no dark matter do exist. In 2018, a team of Yale astronomers found a different galaxy, which presented the same composition profile, causing its own confusion back in the day. However, the techniques and methods used in this recent study are more robust and reliable, and thus now call the dark matter theory into serious question. How will scientists explain these findings? It will be interesting to see. NASA recently created artificial glowing clouds. NASA revealed their new equipment, the Super Soaker mission, meant to create glowing clouds, using a mini rocket they fired into Earth's upper atmosphere. NASA detonated the rocket, which formed artificial clouds called PMCs, or polar mesospheric clouds. These polar mesospheric clouds hold ice crystals in the atmosphere and glow due to their ability to capture sunlight. While they may seem frivolous, they have a greater purpose. The PMCs can assist us in sustaining Earth life. They will also give scientists advanced data into what is happening in our atmosphere. The PMC rocket launched in January from Alaska and reached a height of 53 miles into the air before it was detonated, releasing 485 pounds of water vapor into the skies, cooling the air. It took 18 seconds for NASA detective lasers to catch the glow of the PMCs. The sudden cold temperature is what triggered the glow, and certain scientists believe that glowing clouds might be a common occurrence in our future as more satellites are added to the atmosphere. PMCs occasionally occur in nature during the summer months across the Earth's poles, typically at twilight when the sun shines over them. According to physicist Richard Collins at the University of Alaska, what has attracted a lot of interest in these clouds is their sensitivity. They're occurring just on the edge of viability in the upper atmosphere, where it's incredibly dry and incredibly cold. They're a very sensitive indicator of changes in the upper atmosphere, changes in temperature or changes in water vapor. Sending out artificial PMCs into the sky is bound to help us understand microphysics in a brand new light. The rocket was sent up in January precisely because they do not form in the cold months of the year, and so the artificial PMC could not be mistaken for a naturally occurring one. Another space physicist, Irfan Azim, stated, "We wanted to make sure to avoid mixing artificially created and naturally occurring PMCs. That way we could be confident that any PMC we observed was attributable to the Super Soaker experiment." Carbon dioxide confirmed on the Moon. We are always looking for gases and compounds on other planets that resemble what we see on Earth. While we have heard many whispers of water on Mars that could indicate life, one lesser heard conversation is that of carbon dioxide on the Moon. Though after decades of theorizing and questioning, it seems as though we might have an answer. Researchers as of November 2021 seem to have found lunar carbon dioxide cold traps that could have solid carbon dioxide components. Some areas of our Moon are constantly shadowed, shrouded in darkness, with little impact from the sun in these areas. The temperatures can drop lower than those of Pluto. With such staggeringly low temperatures, cold traps are able to form. Cold traps are areas so cold that volatile substances can freeze and become solid. So why does it really make a difference if the CO2 is solid or not? If the carbon dioxide is solid, this means that it can be used to prolong lunar research. In the future, when we send explorers up, whether they are human or robotic, this solid carbon dioxide can provide the necessary materials for fuel and materials for longer expeditions. Furthermore, increasing our understanding of how volatile substances interact on the Moon could help us with research into how water, amongst other elements and compounds, form and may appear on the Moon. Despite this new research confirming the existence of and mapping out the areas for carbon dioxide cold traps, the idea of cold traps has been included in discussions and predictions by planetary scientists for years. To begin confirming these theories and suggestions, researchers used 11 years' worth of temperature data from the Diviner Lunar Radiometer experiment, a high-tech piece of equipment aboard NASA's Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter. The 2021 research published in the AGU Journal Geophysical Research Letters shows that a number of the cold traps are focused on the lunar South Pole. They span 204 square kilometers. The most concentrated area is in the Amundsen crater, which is home to 84 square kilometers of cold traps. Here, the temperatures never seem to exceed 60 degrees Kelvin, which is about minus 352 degrees Fahrenheit. Despite the exciting and promising aspects of this discovery, it is important to remember that just because there are cold traps on the Moon does not mean that there are solid forms of carbon dioxide, just that there could potentially be. Norbert Schorkhofer, a planetary scientist at the Planetary Science Institute and the lead author of this study, said, "My surprise was that the cold traps are actually definitely there. There are plenty of missions to track down aspects of research that go by unsuccessfully, with years of more studying before being able to confirm any of the theories at all. This research continues to be highly promising. While at the moment all we can confirm is the existence of cold traps, it will not be long before these discoveries have much greater, more practical applications, from rocket fuel to finding water." In our galaxy's interstellar gas, voids are being created by dying stars. The world we live in is marked with history. From monuments to centuries of waste, it's impossible to deny the presence of humans, animals, and plants alike on planet Earth. Similarly, up in outer space, we can see a long marking of what was once there, as voids are seemingly being left following the explosions of massive stars. The gas that flows between the stars within the Milky Way galaxy has some further information hidden within it. It appears there are imprints of bubbles from within space, a leftover trace of a star's supernova explosion when it reaches the end of its life cycle. Scientists seem to think that this is the history of a star etched into the night sky. We often think of space as just that, empty space. However, in between stars, there is more than the nothingness we might think of. Between these celestial bodies, you would find plenty of gas moving through the galaxy. In some points, every now and again, the gas moves in such a way that it forms a cloud, composed largely of atomic hydrogen. As far as we know regarding star formation, there are stars that are able to form within these clouds and, as is the circle of life, once they fade, they help to form the future gas clouds. Despite this knowledge, we are yet to understand precisely how the gas manages to move around the galaxy. A team of astronomers led by the lead researcher, Juan Diego Sola of the Italian National Institute for Astrophysics, based in Italy, began to research this phenomenon, starting by looking into the structures of the atomic hydrogen. The data collected was gathered by the HI4PI project, an all-sky survey that used radio wavelengths to study the sky, resulting in a map of the neutral atomic hydrogen spread throughout our galaxy. This is by far the most advanced map of this kind, mapping not only the placement of these gases throughout the Milky Way, but also the velocity. It's thought that by joining this research up with a model of the Milky Way's rotation, the team of astronomers will have success in their attempt to figure out the distances to the structures within the gas. This data allows for algorithms to look for complex and intricate patterns in the structures, completing an otherwise impossible analysis far too sensitive for people to complete by eye. So far, the team appear to think that the gas is a result of supernovae explosions, sweeping gas into denser formations and leaving bubbles that eventually pop, eventually leaving an imprint behind. There is much more research that is needed in order to uncover more about these so-called voids, though this research team has certainly made impressive strides. The scientific world is constantly developing, from puzzles we are still unraveling from a decade ago to having to correct what we thought we knew. What will we discover next? Astronomers capture closest exoplanet, Coconuts 2b. It seems that almost every single exoplanet that has been discovered is unique from other planets in some way, providing what seems to be a near limitless source of information about the strange world that stretches infinitely beyond us. And a recently discovered exoplanet called Coconuts 2b has shown us once again that there are always strange planets yet to be discovered with new information to provide. This new planet was technically first located over a decade ago in 2011, but was then misclassified as a free-floating object as it did not appear to be orbiting a star. Zhujian Zhang, a graduate student working with researchers at the University of Hawaii Institute for Astronomy, took a closer look and realized that it was actually orbiting a star, therefore meriting a reclassification as an exoplanet. Coconuts 2b immediately became an interesting source of study for two reasons. The first was that, at a mere 35 light-years away from our own planet Earth, this newly labelled exoplanet is the closest exoplanet ever discovered. Secondly, it is such a large distance from its own star that very little light is able to reach it, meaning that night and day on the surface of the planet look almost exactly the same. Coconuts 2b is a large gas giant that weighs in at over 3 times the size of Jupiter. Its orbit is an astonishing 900 billion kilometers away from its Sun, which is a nondescript low-mass red dwarf called Coconuts 2a. It's this wide orbit that leaves its night and day virtually indistinguishable, as well as what caused it to be mistakenly identified as a free-floating object initially. The closeness of this unique exoplanet means that researchers will be able to directly image it, something that cannot be said for very many exoplanets as they tend to be hidden behind the glare of their host stars. As it is, Coconuts 2b is the second coldest exoplanet ever imaged at just 320 degrees Fahrenheit, and it can be only captured via low-energy infrared light. With a massive planet on a super-wide separation orbit and with a very cool central star, Coconuts 2 represents a very different planetary system than our own solar system. Zhang said as he explained his incredible discovery, which was made using the Cool Companions on ultra-wide orbits survey during the completion of his PhD thesis. This allowed the planet to be directly imaged, which made its exoplanet status apparent, whereas previous identifications had been made using the Wide-Field Infrared Explorer satellite. Even though over 4,000 exoplanets have so far been confirmed, with thousands more assuredly waiting to be discovered, Coconuts 2b manages to stand out due to its unique features which merit further study. It's not often that such an interesting exoplanet turns up so close to our own planet, creating many more opportunities for continuing study and potential discoveries. It's original findings such as these that allow the field of astronomy to continue pushing ever forward in the search for the next great breakthrough. Tonga volcano eruption triggered atmospheric gravity waves reaching the edge of space. About 65 kilometers north of Tonga Tapu, the main island of Tonga, there is a submarine volcano named Hunga Tonga Hunga Hape. On January 15, 2022, the volcano erupted and created quite the spectacle. An international team of researchers from multiple institutions collaborated their abundant satellite data with ground-level observations to prove that Hunga Tonga Hunga Hape's latest eruption was unique both because of its magnitude and speed, as well as the range of gravity and atmospheric waves it created. Previous to the January 15th eruption, there was a series of smaller volcanic events that began in December of 2021. January's eruption created a vertical plume that reached over 50 kilometers above the surface of the Earth. For 12 hours after this volcanic event, heat that was released from the water and hot ash was the most substantial gravity wave source on Earth. Satellite images show ripple-like gravity waves that extended across the Pacific Basin. Reverberating atmospheric waves that traveled around the planet a minimum of 6 times and reached extraordinary speeds of 320 meters per second were also a consequence of Hunga Tonga Hunga Hape's eruption. It's believed that such a large explosion was caused when large amounts of magma and water interacted. There is an extraordinary temperature difference between the water, which was around 20 degrees Celsius, and the magma, which is around 1100 degrees Celsius. With each contact, water would have been pushed deeper into the margins of magma, creating a larger surface area of contact and propelling more explosions in a chain reaction. Those who witnessed the eruption of Hunga Tonga Hunga Hape reported crackling and noises like artillery fire from up to 90 miles away. Some researchers are warning that we may not have seen all of the repercussions of this phenomenal eruption yet. There is speculation that the Antarctic hole in the ozone will be negatively affected by the powerful atmospheric waves. This event affected such a large region that it will have an impact on how scientists view future atmospheric weather and climate models. Jupiter's Great Red Spot may survive by eating smaller storms. Jupiter's famous Great Red Spot is undoubtedly the storm to end all storms. A massive anticyclonic high-pressure storm with swirling winds that rage at speeds over 400 km per hour, it holds the title of the largest storm so far discovered in the solar system. And recently, Scientists realized that the key to its size may be none other than storm cannibalism of sorts. In the past few years, some thought that the Great Red Spot may have been well on the way towards running out of steam at long last, as it appeared as though it was slowly decreasing in size. Additionally, smaller anticyclones, which were smaller than the megastorm but still about half the size of Earth, kept running into the storm, and it appeared that they were taking small bites out of the swirling clouds and further decreasing the size. Upon further study, researchers now believe that the opposite is true. Rather than shrinking the Great Red Spot, the smaller anticyclones were being consumed by the larger storm, resulting in the latter increasing its internal rotation velocity and further fueling the enormous swirling mass. Because anticyclones, like the Great Red Spot, are composed of high-powered winds churning around a central area of intense pressurized air, when the smaller anticyclones collide, the larger storm effectively steals their rotational wind and uses it as a power-up of sorts in order to increase its own wind speeds. This process is what caused the storm to appear to shrink, when it was simply absorbing the forces of the smaller storms to become even stronger. Once the energy has been absorbed from the storm collision, the Great Red Spot would return to its previous size. Essentially, although it appeared that the smaller storms, named flakes because of the way that they appear to flake off parts of the cloud swirling over the Great Red Spot, appeared to be shrinking the size of the storm, the larger storm was feeding on the flakes to become even stronger. The process of absorbing the energy from the anticyclones made the clouds covering the Great Red Spot contract and shrink, making it seem as though the storm itself was growing smaller. However, the entire time that researchers were attempting to discover what was happening to Jupiter's famous spot and why it appeared as though it was running out of energy, the powerful vortex at the center of the storm underneath the clouds was becoming ever stronger as it powered the winds that swirl famously across Jupiter's surface. Although the shrinking size and the deceptive nature of the flakes made it seem as though the Great Red Spot was going to disappear forever, scientists were very quickly reminded that, when it comes to space, not everything is as it seems, as the famous Great Red Spot was simply becoming stronger than ever. The mystery of Tabby's star. Next up is the mystery of Tabby's star, more scientifically known as KIC 8462852. If you haven't already heard of this star, it's slightly larger than the Sun and about 1,300 light-years away. What's even more exciting about the discovery of this star is that it's been known to randomly dim by up to 22% for as long as days at a time. No other stars have been known to do that and have only dimmed slightly if another planet was passing by and blocking light. If it can't be a planet in transit, then what could be causing the light to dim? Scientists have been in awe of this star and racking their brains to come to a viable answer to the intermittent dips in the star's shine. Some possible explanations consist of pieces of comets or destroyed planets. Of course, there are also more unusual possibilities, such as an immense orbiting structure that is being built by aliens. Whilst some people strongly believe in those reasons, in 2017, experts got their hands on new research proposing that a ringed planet near Tabby's star could be the culprit for the bizarre light patterns. The ring shape would be able to cover a lot more light than a regularly shaped planet, as it takes up much more surface space, so that became a very real possibility. The next question to tackle was why the percentage of dimming varies. Colombian astronomers played with the ringed planet theory and explained that the gravitational interactions would cause the ring to flap up and down, changing the amount of light. Although there are various theories, each one holds many problems, and we can't be certain that they are adequate explanations. For example, the ring would have to be large enough to block the light from a star larger than the Sun, which would be approximately 3 times the size of Saturn's ring. The issue that the possibility of the moving ring presents is that it wouldn't account for random dimming, only the periodic aspect of the dimming light. It's clear that at this point in time, we still have a lot of work to do before we're able to draw any conclusions about Tabby's star. What do you think? Could there be a super Saturn somewhere light years away? We may never find out in our lifetime, but it would most definitely be an interesting discovery. NASA's Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter satellite photo spots Perseverance on Mars. NASA have sent many rovers to Mars throughout the years, gaining valuable insight into the red planet and leaving a number of nations captivated by these robot vehicles. Sojourner, Spirit and Opportunity, Curiosity, and most recently joining the team Perseverance. This little group has given us fantastic information that will aid scientific development, and Perseverance is no different. Perseverance, casually referred to as Percy by many at NASA, made it to Mars as recently as February 2021, but has wasted no time in exploring. Percy is roaming around the huge Jezero crater on Mars, which is a whopping 28 miles in width. The Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, otherwise known as MRO, has been looking at Mars since 2006. The insights from MRO have told us more about the atmosphere and terrain on Mars, looking for signs of water as well as helping bounce data back and forth during missions on Mars. Now, however, the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter has captured a photograph of Percy rolling through the South Satar, and our latest little rover looks no bigger than a pin drop on the huge area. South Satar is one region within the Jezero crater. It is an area on Mars filled with rocky ridges and plenty of sand dunes, hence the name South Satar, derived from a Navajo word, which, roughly translated, means amidst the sand. As cute as it would be for Percy to simply have a wander, the mission does have a goal, and the Perseverance rover is actually scanning for an old boulder to take samples from. At the start of September, the little robot successfully took a core sample from a boulder named Rochette. This was not the first time Perseverance tried to collect a sample, however, with the first attempt taken on August 6, 2021, resulting in an empty extraction tube. The Perseverance project manager at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, Jennifer Trosper, said, "It went really well, other than that the rock behaved in a way that did not allow us to get any sample in the tube. Despite this setback, the rover lived up to his name and shortly found a new cooperative rock to sample. The team remain confident that the failed August extraction was not a fault of Perseverance's, but rather the texture of the rock being incompatible with his design. Nevertheless, it is hoped that a future unmanned mission will allow NASA researchers to collect the Rochette sample, allowing us to study it here on Earth. The aim of Percy's mission is to collect samples of various rocks' cores from different areas in the Jezero crater. NASA's scientists believe that this will create a comprehensive view of Mars's geological history and what the climate has been like throughout the years. They hope this timeline could fill us in for millions or even billions of years into the past. Lots of research on Mars is fairly focused on its climate. This is in an attempt to help us determine if there could ever have been life on the red planet. A NASA statement also revealed that this could pave the way for human exploration on the red planet. All these little rovers work so hard, yet they do get their holiday. During the Mars-Solar conjunction, when Earth and Mars are on opposite sides of the Sun, research gets a little tricky to say the least. The rover's research is slowed down and they take a little rest. Luckily for us, this only comes around every 2 years. Hopefully, Perseverance has a successful time on Mars as the rovers that arrived before him. Saturn's moon Titan is cooking its own atmosphere. Compared to our one moon, some of the planets in our solar system are drowning in these natural satellites, with Saturn having 82 moons, 53 of which are confirmed. One of the ringed planet's moons is particularly interesting, however, catching the eyes of scientists time and time again. This time, it's Titan's thick atmosphere that has sparked discussion. Titan is Saturn's largest moon, and the dense atmosphere of the planet, largely made of nitrogen, seems to be the result of organic material seemingly baking in the moon's insides. There is plenty of interesting organic chemistry taking place on this moon, making it a prime spot to investigate potential alien life. Other than us here on Earth, Titan is the only body in our solar system that has a significant amount of liquid on its surface. Coupled with the complex molecules incorporating carbon, makes this moon a possible location for some sort of life. Titan is the only moon in our solar system at least that has some sort of notable atmosphere, and that has, of course, raised several questions. Scientists have wondered and theorized the source of this atmosphere for years, suggesting primarily that the ammonia ice from comets has somehow been converted into nitrogen. Although this still does not address the effects of complex organic material upon the atmosphere. The composition of Titan's atmosphere, as far as we can understand, does not align with the types of nitrogen and other elements we can find in comets. Furthermore, there is 5% of Titan's atmosphere that is made of methane, something else this theory does not take into consideration. Kelly Miller, a researcher at Southwest Research Institute of Boulder, Colorado, and the lead author of a new study, has led a team that is looking at data collected by the Rosetta spacecraft. This looked at the comet 67P, Churyumov-Gerasimenko, and discovered that the comet was made up of 50% ice, 25% rock, and 25% organic material. It is plausible that these materials, which would have been present in the early formation of the solar system, could be the same materials that built Titan. Comets, and, as Miller refers to them, primitive bodies, can be described as leftover building blocks of the solar system that feed into bigger bodies we can still see today, such as Titan. Miller suggests the organic, rocky material that is more primitive would be found in the core of bodies like Titan. According to calculations carried out by Miller and her team, if the organic material were in the core of the moon, then it would be able to produce gas not dissimilar to the atmosphere we know Titan to have today. The organic material combined with the thermal environment would result in a thick gas atmosphere. Of course, further research is necessary before we will be able to determine if this is accurate, though the theory gives us an explanation that makes sense given the information that we have to hand. Young galaxy surprises scientists with its impressive bulge. Scientists are on a mission to find what else is out there. Space is vast and limitless, so that question does not exactly have an easy answer. In 2020, however, one particularly exciting discovery was made. Astronomers discovered a young galaxy that seems similar to the Milky Way. The new galaxy, given the catchy name SPT 041847, has been likened in characteristics to our own galaxy here on Earth. However, this newly found galaxy is a great distance away from us, meaning the time it takes for the light to travel to Earth is so long that when we look through our telescopes at it, we see how it looked 12 billion years ago, making it 1.4 billion years old. Whilst 1.4 billion is still a relatively large number, in the context of how old galaxies, planets, and other celestial objects may be, this is a very young galaxy. Some observations of SPT 041847 showed what we would have anticipated seeing in early galaxies, though some observations were a little more unexpected. Stars formed at a rapid pace in this galaxy, though when the universe was so young, there was lots of gas available. Something more surprising is that despite the seemingly sporadic activity, this young galaxy had a rotating disk, and what is being described as a galactic bulge in its middle. This structure was surprising to experts, but not unfamiliar. This is the same structure our galaxy, the Milky Way, has today. The similarities between SPT 041847 and the Milky Way are limited and may not be permanent. Our Milky Way has what is referred to as a barrel spiral shape, made out of lengths of stars and gas, described as arms. This arm shape is not visible in SPT 041847 at all. Some scientists think this galaxy could evolve into a different type of galaxy completely and become elliptical. Being able to observe as this galaxy evolves and changes means we will be able to predict what will happen to others and possibly find out how the Milky Way evolved. Lead author of the study, Francesca Rizzo, a PhD student from Germany's Max Planck Institute for Astrophysics, said, "The structures that we observe in nearby spiral galaxies and in our Milky Way were already in place 12 billion years ago. This means that there could be less changes taking place over time than what we first thought. Scientists first spotted the galaxy using the Atacama Large Millimeter Submillimeter Array. ALMA is comprised of 66 antennas throughout the Chilean desert, which, when combined, creates one telescopic lens. A technique called gravitational lensing was used to conduct these observations, where the light of a neighbouring galaxy was used to magnify the light of SPT 041847. Discovering more about how our universe formed is an ongoing task, though with each new observation we find more and more about the origin of our galaxy through those just like us. The black hole at the centre of the Milky Way may be something even more mysterious. If there is one element of space that continues to mystify scientists, it is black holes, and the gaping black hole at the centre of the Milky Way, named Sagittarius A star, is perhaps one of the most mysterious of them all. For starters, astronomers have long observed the strange flashing bursts of radio waves, X-rays and gamma rays being emitted in regular intervals from Sagittarius A star. But recent observations of bursts that were up to 100 times brighter than the regular bursts made researchers believe that even more mysterious elements might be at play, and they were eager to find out more. To accomplish this feat, they began to analyze the 15 years of data collected by NASA's Neil Gehrels Swift Observatory satellite, which is dedicated to detecting gamma-ray bursts like those seen coming from Sagittarius A star. The team, made up of international researchers led by Alexis Andres, were looking for any sort of regular patterns or activity that might tell them a little bit about these strange occurrences. Although no clear patterns emerged, they did notice that the frequency increased greatly between the years 2006 and 2008, with a much lower rate of activity the following 4 years before picking back up again in 2012. However, this second, more recent batch of bursts appears to follow a much different pattern from the first, puzzling researchers even more. As observation is one of the only methods we currently have at our disposal to research such enigmas as black holes, scientists hope that adding this backlog of data to the findings unfolding in present day will help to remove some of the mystery surrounding these central flares. Further study will hopefully be able to tell us exactly what is causing these bursts, be it from passing gaseous clouds, stars, or something else altogether. Co-author of the study, Dr. Jacob van den Eden from the University of Oxford said, "How the flares occur exactly remains unclear. It was previously thought that more flares follow after gaseous clouds or stars pass by the black hole, but there is no evidence for that yet, and we cannot yet confirm the hypothesis that the magnetic properties of the surrounding gas play a role either." And certainly, when it comes to solving this mystery, having access to databases full of observations taken over the past 15 years helps tremendously as researchers look to the environment around Sagittarius A star for clues that could help them piece together this massive, mysterious puzzle lurking at the center of our galaxy. Mysterious kick just after the Big Bang may have created dark matter. The Big Bang is a mysterious and mind-boggling thing to comprehend. It was the instant that all matter in the universe was created and has understandably been the focus of much research. The same sort of interest lies with dark matter too, the mysterious substance that is ever present but is totally ignorant of light. And it turns out the two areas might be more connected than we think. In the universe, there is both matter and antimatter in equal quantities. When they come into contact, they cancel each other out and are destroyed. And yet, when all the matter and antimatter in the universe were first created, they should have instantly annihilated themselves. But, since we are here, that clearly didn't happen. New research suggests that in the very early universe, there was some sort of trigger, some sort of kick that produced a surplus of matter. This answers the question of why there is a greater amount of matter compared to antimatter today. Subsequently, it could be because of this kick that dark matter came into existence. The biggest issue with dark matter is, well, we do not really know what exactly it is. We know that it exists, and we know that it takes up about 80% of all matter in the universe. That means with everything we can observe from Earth, all the galaxies, stars, planets, and moons, it is all just a fraction of how much dark matter is out there. But the perplexing thing is that although dark matter takes up much of the universe, it does not seem to have much of an effect on it. As reported in Live Science, when one process dominates an interaction, it really takes over. Unless other physics comes into play, rarely do two competing forces come out in balance. This can be shown in the process of when stars collapse. Gravity and electromagnetism are in competition inside of the star until gravity eventually dominates and the star collapses and becomes a black hole. The paper is just the tip of the iceberg in our understanding of dark matter, but it does lead us down a potential path for discovering the truth. Bacteria survived on the outside of the space station for a year. At the moment, those studying the potential for life outside of Earth have been operating under the assumption that everything outside of our own atmosphere is considered inhospitable until proven otherwise. Although some planets have displayed conditions that appeared favourable to the potential for life outside of Earth, there has not yet been any concrete proof of this. However, a species of bacteria known as Deinococcus radiodurans has given researchers much to think about after having survived on the outside of the International Space Station for a year, which is absolutely no small feat. Even astronauts living in the artificially engineered environment within the ISS for the same amount of time experience drastic changes in their bodies when they return, and this bacterium was not protected from the harsh realities of space. This bacterium was studied as part of an experiment where it was placed on a special platform outside of the space station in order to study its survival. On the platform, it endured ultraviolet radiation, the effects of a vacuum, seemingly unsurvivable temperatures, and microgravity. And yet, against all odds, it stayed alive. The only protection that Deinococcus radiodurans had was a glass wall that filtered out any ultraviolet radiation below 190 to 200 nanometers, as scientists were attempting to mimic the conditions observed on Mars, which has frequently been touted as the location with the greatest potential for extraterrestrial life forms and may present several planetary protection concerns. Interestingly, at the end of the year, the bacterium was compared to other members of its species which had been kept as a control on Earth for the duration of the sample's stay outside of the ISS, and there were some marked differences noted. As expected, the extraterrestrial Deinococcus radiodurans had a much lower survival rate than its Earthbound counterparts, but it had also evolved some unique distinguishing characteristics, including bumps and vesicles on its surface, triggered repair mechanisms, and a slightly altered configuration of proteins and mRNA. These changes, which researchers hypothesize are due to an efficient molecular response system, can give scientists studying the potential for bacterial transport between and within extraterrestrial worlds a better idea of what life outside of Earth might look like. This is not the first time that Deinococcus radiodurans has been studied in space, nor is it the longest time that it has been exposed to the inhospitable cosmic elements, as previously a bacterium sample was left outside of the ISS for 3 years. That experiment showed that bacterial life outside of Earth-like conditions was possible, while this recent trial sought to analyze the exact mechanisms that allowed the bacterium to evolve and survive under such unbelievably extreme conditions. These investigations help us to understand the mechanisms and processes through which life can exist beyond Earth, expanding our knowledge on how to survive and adapt in the hostile environment of outer space, said Tetiana Milievich, a biochemist at the University of Vienna. For now, studies will continue to be conducted on other strains of bacterium in an attempt to expand the knowledge base regarding the concept of bacterial life outside of Earth. Hubble finds Betelgeuse mysterious dimming is due to a traumatic outburst. The red supergiant star Betelgeuse, part of the Orion constellation and the namesake of the hit 80s Beetlejuice film character, has been dimming in an unexplained and unexpected manner, leaving a cloud of dust emitting from the surface of the star, according to observations made by NASA's Hubble Space Telescope beginning in 2019. Researchers have suggested that this dust cloud was first formed due to superhot plasma being released from a large convection cell passing through the star's atmosphere and out into the much colder outer layers. This then cooled down in the outer layers before turning into grains of dust. The current belief is that the dust cloud was blocking the light from the star, making it appear dimmer when looking on. By the April of 2020, Betelgeuse was returned to its normal state, though in February of 2020, the reduced brightness of the star was visible from Earth with the naked eye. 1/4 of the surface had been blocked with the believed dust, though at the peak of the blocking, the brightness of the star was actually reduced by more than 2/3 of its usual shine. The most commonly believed theory is the dust cloud, though others have suggested a star spot covering the visible surface. Scientists have been tracing the images captured by Hubble in the lead-up to the dimming, looking back from January 2019. The ultraviolet light spectroscopic observations of Betelgeuse captured by Hubble are being studied to find clues as to what exactly caused the dimming. The analysis of the star is part of an ongoing 3-year study looking to research the variations in the atmosphere of the star, as it is known to expand and contract on a 420-day cycle. The ultraviolet light sensitivity allowed researchers to probe the surface of the star, which is not visible without the Hubble's equipment due to the 20,000 degree Fahrenheit surface temperature. The hot, dense material continued to move beyond the visible surface of the star, eventually to millions of miles away. The outburst of material, eventually cooling to form a dust, has an unknown route. There have been some suggestions that the pulsation cycle of Betelgeuse, which did maintain regularity, has aided the perceived dimming, as changes in the velocity of the gas upon Betelgeuse's surface were seen to be fluctuated as measured by the stellar activity, an automated telescope from the Leibniz Institute for Astrophysics. Regardless as to the true cause of the dimming, from spring 2020 onwards, Betelgeuse seems to have returned to its normal, bright state, with the atmosphere having returned to a visibly normal state too. Space tourism company to launch commercial flights to the stratosphere by 2024. Travelling to space, a concept that, until recently, was nothing more than a wishful fantasy straight out of a sci-fi novel or TV show. Well, now Worldview Enterprises has entered the scene, and they are planning on revolutionising the spaceflight industry to make space flights accessible to a wider range of people. Worldview Enterprises was established 10 years ago in Arizona and is now offering a journey into space by using rocketless balloons that will travel straight up into the stratosphere. A far cry from Bezos's Blue Origin flight, the Worldview Enterprises experience will be an interesting endeavour to be sure. The balloons will lift Voyager's 18 miles into the air. This is nowhere near as deep into space as the company's competitors offer. True space is said to begin at the Kármán line, 100 kilometers into space, though others argue it begins at 50 miles up. Blue Origin's flight can get you just above the Kármán line at 106 kilometers. The peak of the Worldview Enterprises flight might disappoint, but they are confident in their rocketless aviation, claiming it will be worth the once-in-a-lifetime experience. Clients will be able to witness the Earth's curve for the first time with their own eyes, as well as see the true darkness of space. CEO Ryan Hartman stated, "We're redefining space tourism. Lamentably, the tickets start at $50,000, hardly a cheap venture for those curious about participating in the journeys. The flights are said to be between 6 and 8 hours in length. Some journeys might last several days. The balloons are more accurately capsules that can hold up to 8 people at a time. The company is planning on operating 100 flights annually over various historically or culturally important landmarks that will supposedly last 5 days. Some such destinations include the Great Barrier Reef, the Giza Pyramids, and the wonders of the world, and the journeys are allegedly going to be smooth and gentle. Worldview Enterprises argue that, unlike Blue Origin flights, which use rocket power and suffer G-force, their balloon alternatives will allow people of all sizes and ages to traverse space. When asked about whether the Worldview Enterprise space travel is a joyride, CEO Ryan Hartman refuted it, saying it's much bigger and more important than most people realize. Hartman claimed he wishes to turn space travel into a commodity for all sorts of people from all walks of life, for families, for couples, for cosmos-loving individuals. Hartman believes that space is the future of the travel industry. The very first flight has already been entirely sold out by Space for Humanity, a non-profit organization that is offering the purchased tickets to anyone who wishes to participate but is unable to afford the relatively expensive tickets themselves. The first flight will begin in Arizona, near to the Grand Canyon. However, the company are hopeful that they might be able to add other landmarks to that list soon after they can prove how the world should invest in their idea. Samples from asteroid Roigu are most primitive material we've found. Asteroids can sound really frightening. After all, we know what happened to the dinosaurs. However, they hold plenty of valuable research material. One asteroid, a carbon-filled near-Earth asteroid 162173 Roigu, seems to contain the most primitive material within our solar system. Tests at 2 different laboratories have confirmed. Deborah Domingue from the Planetary Science Institute explained that the asteroid contains hydrated materials and signs of organics from early on in the formation of the solar system. Collecting this sample from Roigu without analyzing it at all is a huge milestone in itself. Scientists have long thought that studying remains from an asteroid would be more than useful. Though falling through the Earth's atmosphere destroys a lot of meteoric material, and when we do get meteorites land, they are often too damaged and scorched to conduct research from. Therefore, collecting samples becomes much more difficult. Scientists need to find a way to bring samples down to Earth from up in space. So far, samples from the Moon, Comet 81P or Wild 2, and asteroid 25143 Itokawa have all been obtained that way, and now Roigu 2. Hayabusa Mission 1 somewhat failed, delivering less than 1 milligram of dust from Itokawa, but Hayabusa 2 returned an impressive 5.4 gram sample from Roigu. Most of the results found from analyzing the data confirmed what was already thought, though some of the material's properties were somewhat surprising. The sample proved to be incredibly porous, with an average bulk density far lower than any meteorite found on Earth. Researchers say that this makes sense as to why we do not see much meteoric material make it to Earth, since porous materials would not survive falling through the atmosphere. This asteroid is incredibly primitive, and researchers hope these samples will change the way we view planet formation to be a little more accurate. With more samples ready to be collected, hopefully more results will continue to confirm what we think we know. A giant black hole keeps evading detection in Able 2261. Black holes are not known for their ability to be photographed. In fact, when it happened for the first time, it was a big deal. Because of their vacuous nature, scientists tend to use the effects black holes have on their environment in order to pinpoint them. And after decades of black hole study, you would think we would be pretty good at spotting where they are by now. But there is one specific black hole, a giant one, that keeps giving scientists the slip. It is believed that a supermassive black hole exists at the center of most galaxies, if not all of them. And yet, in a galaxy in the space cluster known as Able 2261, roughly 2.7 billion light-years away, we do not have concrete evidence of one. According to what we already know about black hole behavior, there should be a gigantic black hole at the center of Able 2261, so big that it would weigh anywhere between 3 billion to 10 billion suns, according to the galaxy's overall mass. Researchers have used a variety of methods to try and capture the black hole and any evidence of its existence. Prior efforts involved using X-rays, specifically looking for any that came from the galaxy's center. This is because X-rays can be used to show black hole behavior, as X-rays are a side effect of the matter that enters the black hole and speeds up tremendously. This results in a lot of X-ray energy. Newer studies also did not find anything. Using better tech that searched deeper into the Able cluster, the more recent effort looked elsewhere, not just in the galaxy's center on the chance that the black hole had been knocked elsewhere because of a galactic merger. When huge objects collide with black holes, they send off gravitational waves out into space. If the waves are not symmetrical, they can potentially change the black hole's course of direction. Scientists posited that this might be the reason they were unable to find the supermassive black hole. These types of events are currently only hypothetical. NASA officials said the following on the matter: "It is not known whether supermassive black holes even get close enough to each other to produce gravitational waves and merge. So far, astronomers have only verified the mergers of much smaller black holes. The detection of recoiling supermassive black holes would embolden scientists using and developing observatories to look for gravitational waves from merging supermassive black holes," they added. Able 2261 might be one of the best places to search for one of these events, as it shows a number of signs that it underwent a huge galactic merger at some point. The Hubble Space Telescope and Subaru Telescope have each shown that at Able 2261's core there is a much greater star density than would be expected of a galaxy of Able's size. NASA officials said that the distance between the galaxy's center and the densest pack of stars was strikingly distant. Unfortunately, only time will tell if we are able to find the missing black hole. Saturn's Death Star moon may have a hidden ocean. Everyone remembers the sci-fi fantasy film Star Wars, which has contributed plenty to science, encouraging an interest in astronomy and space in children. However, the impact has gone further than inspiration and pop culture. One of Saturn's moons, Mimas, the smallest moon of the ringed planet, has been given a Star Wars-themed nickname, the Death Star. Now, this Death Star lookalike moon might have some secrets, with recent research suggesting a moon could be hiding just beneath the surface. Mimas is the moon closest to Saturn, though the proximity does not hinder observations. NASA's Cassini space probe observed a peculiar change in the path of Mimas. As the moon was rotating, it seemed to have an odd wobble to it, pushing scientists to try and figure out exactly why. Research published in the journal Icarus seems to indicate that the wobble could be due to liquid underneath the iced surface of the moon. The paper suggests that a liquid ocean is moving around underneath the ice of the moon, causing the moon to waver on its course. Of course, it is an exciting revelation whether water is found within the solar system. We know that here on Earth, water is key to maintaining life, so it is always a good sign in the search for alternate life forms. If there is indeed liquid on this Saturn moon, this creates so many more potential areas of research. The lead author of the study, Alicia Roden, a geophysicist at the Southwest Research Institute in San Antonio, Texas, explained that if the team can prove there is an ocean on Mimas, then this is proof of a new class of stealth ocean worlds, meaning that even where there doesn't look to be an ocean at first glance, it may very well be there. This is not the first time something like this would have been discovered. Interior water ocean worlds have been found within our solar system already, with Saturn's Enceladus and Jupiter's Europa. The difference here is that these oceans did have tides and movements that impacted the surface. There was tangible evidence of geological activity. Mimas, on the other hand, simply appears to be ice all the way through. Roden stated, Mimas's surface was tricking us, before elaborating, continuing to discuss how greatly this discovery has expanded the possibility of habitable areas in our solar system. The next steps to attempt to confirm this theory is to build a model to look at the gravitational interactions with Saturn. This assesses the possibility for the tidal forces being able to maintain a temperature that keeps the water liquid. This is only the start of the research, so much more is needed to fully piece together what exactly is behind the wobble, though this idea is certainly an exciting place to start. There is a huge void near our galaxy. One fact about the cosmic world might be surprising. Galaxies are unevenly clustered around the universe, clumping together at random. Despite the assumption of some, one galaxy does not begin when another one ends. Instead, they are spread all throughout. We are part of something dubbed the Local Group, which consists of our very own Milky Way and the nearby Andromeda Galaxy, with a cluster of tiny dwarf galaxies surrounding us. It is close to the Milky Way that the local void resides. The local void is a structure in our cosmic neighborhood, so to speak, that contains nearly no galaxies proper, dwarf or otherwise. The Milky Way borders the void directly. Our galaxy, however, is moving further away from the void at about 260 kilometers per second. This is a result of the fact that matter attracts matter. This is also the reason as to why such voids exist. Because of the way gravity works, matter clumps together, thus leaving chunks of space completely devoid of anything at all. These voids, thus, only increase in their size as time goes on and more matter compacts together. Nothingness in space is significantly more common than galaxies or stars or planets. The Cosmic Flows 3 chart depicts over 17,000 galaxies near our Milky Way, and it also depicts the cosmic void. The point of the cosmic flow is to showcase an accurate compendium of our observable nearby universe. The space voids are an incredibly interesting subject because learning more about them could help us better understand dark matter and how it works. Unfortunately, it is a Herculean task to try and study the local void as it resides right behind the central Milky Way, meaning seeing into it is virtually impossible as of right now. Scientists will have to find an alternative way to study the void other than visually searching for it. Researchers did, however, find a way to trace the dwarf galaxies nearby when it comes to monitoring the void. They found that the nearest dwarf galaxy to the void travels at a shocking 350 kilometers per second. This speed suggests that the size of the void must be immense, for the faster something travels away from the void, the weaker its gravity. Thus, the larger it must be. The knowledge that we live merely 150 million light-years away from this enormous empty void might sound frightening for some, but fortunately, there is absolutely no risk of us getting sucked into it. It is not a black hole. It is simply an area of space that lacks matter. In a handful of centuries, we will be much further away from it. Perseverance rover investigates odd green rock on Mars. Mars, our kindred planet, is a center of fascination. Perseverance, one of the rovers sent to analyze and collect samples to send back to Earth, has been scouring the red planet, searching for anything of intrigue, and it just so happens that it has. On one of its journeys around Mars, Perseverance uncovered an unusual, never-seen green rock that has confused astronomers. The rock itself is 6 inches in length and is a strange shade of green with shimmering spots. Why it looks like this, or what it even is not yet definitively known, and the origin of the rock is questionable. Perseverance's creators and its researchers are on a quest to figure out what this discovery means for Mars and its future. They are attempting to analyze whether the rock was moved from its original location or whether it belongs where it was found. Of course, it could have also come from space in the form of a meteorite. The official Perseverance Twitter account tweeted, "The team has formulated many different hypotheses about this one. Is it something weathered out of the local bedrock? Is it a piece of Mars plopped into the area from a far-flung impact event? Is it a meteorite, or something else?" Perseverance has a SuperCam instrument laser installed. This allows the rover to analyze what a rock or object's chemical plasma is made of, revealing its components. The SuperCam laser can heat objects up to 18,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Alongside the laser is a microphone that helps Perseverance's team back on Earth know how hard an object is by being able to listen to the recorded audio samples that reveal how far the laser can penetrate. This helps them understand how hard a rock or object might be. Unfortunately, the results of Perseverance's tests are still underway, so it might be a while before scientists are able to reveal the truth about this mysterious rock's origins. Asteroid named Electra is found to have 3 companion moons. 200 years ago, astronomers discovered an asteroid in the vast night skies. Now, in the 21st century, we have finally identified and analysed it. And what we found is extraordinary. Electra, known formally as 130 Electra, is not just a mere lone asteroid. On the contrary, the asteroid is accompanied by 3 tiny moons of its own constantly travelling with the asteroid. These natural satellite moons are unlike anything we have ever witnessed before. In the words of Anthony Bordeaux of Thailand's National Astronomical Research Institute, Electra is the first quadruple system ever detected. This new detection shows that dedicated data reduction and processing algorithms modeling the physics of the instruments can push their contrast limits further. Never before has an asteroid been found with so many companion moons, which poses the question of how many such asteroid systems exist out there in the vastness of the universe. Bordeaux also stated it will provide crucial information about planetary formation and evolution of our own solar system. It is not completely out of the realm of possibility for asteroids to have one, maybe two small companion satellites, but spotting them is extremely rare precisely due to their stature. Only 150 out of 1,100,000 asteroids identified possess a recognized moon. Electra is 160 miles across and was uncovered in 1873, traveling across Mars and Jupiter. It took 130 years to find its first moon in 2003, and dubbed S2003. S2014, as the name suggests, was found in 2014. The smaller the moon, the fainter its presence can be detected. S2014 was more than 15,000 times dimmer than Electra, hence why it took so long to find it, as well as the recently found third moon, which has not yet been accurately nor properly measured. With the usage of the SPHERE instrument, Bordeaux's researchers utilized the European Southern Observatory's Very Large Telescope, running it through data reduction programs. Because of this, they were able to remove cosmic background noise from the data. The data algorithms were able to assist the researchers in increasing the glow of the moons, which is how they managed to find Electra's third moon. What we lack, however, is information as to how these systems were created. Cleopatra is an asteroid discovered a while back that we believe to be formed from the debris of another larger mass, be it a planet's moon or even perhaps a destroyed planet. At this current moment in time, it is unknown whether such things are common or not. Mini-jet found near Milky Way's supermassive black hole. At the center of our galaxy, the Milky Way, there is a supermassive black hole. Occasionally, this black hole, called Sagittarius A star, shoots out a mini-jet into space. Thanks to Gerard Cecil's work with the NASA Hubble Space Telescope and other instruments, there is now new evidence that a several thousand-year-old blowtorch-like jet is still pushing into space. His findings come after the 2013 X-ray and radio wave-based evidence revealed a southern jet close to the black hole. Cecil of the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, set out to find a northern counterjet. While his team have not been able to photograph this jet, the telescope revealed a glowing hydrogen cloud close to the black hole that appears to have been hit by a jet stream. Experts believe that after the jet leaves the black hole, it eventually strikes this hydrogen cloud, causing streams of bubbles to stretch out 500 light-years in many directions. According to NASA, this can be compared to a narrow stream from a hose aimed into a pile of sand. The Milky Way's supermassive black hole is as large as the name suggests. It is more than 4 million times larger than our Sun. The black hole accumulates stars and gas clouds into its accretion disk. Accretion disk refers to the rotating matter that surrounds a celestial body. A black hole, for instance, due to gravitational influences. Every so often, matter from the black hole will become superheated and shoot out in the form of narrow beams. These beams are what we call jets. The new observations from the Hubble Space Telescope suggest that the Sagittarius A star black hole is not inactive but will continue to periodically eject jets as it swallows large gas clouds or other masses. Right now, the black hole is powered down, but we are still discovering evidence from previous outbursts. Earlier observations showed that a jet stream from the Sagittarius A star around 2 to 4 million years ago created the Fermi gamma ray bubbles, a pair of massive glowing bubbles above our galaxy. Perhaps a future jet will sustain itself long enough to reach these bubbles, which extend 500 light-years across. The black hole is expected to increase its luminosity so that this lingering jet channel will become more prominent after its next eruption. Researchers are interested to see how far this future stream will travel and if it will truly reach the Fermi gamma ray bubbles. But what do you make of these major scientific discoveries that have expanded what we know about our planet and beyond? Earth could have its own Saturn-like ring band due to space junk. It seems that every day we discover more and more side effects of the growing industrialization and pollution on Earth, and current evidence suggests that the debris that has accumulated on Earth is also impacting outer space as well. NASA recently released some ominous statistics claiming that there are over 100 million pieces of debris larger than a millimeter currently orbiting the Earth, with thousands of these pieces the size of a baseball or larger. Scientists estimate that, based on the gravitational pull of Earth exerted on these pieces of space debris, eventually our planet could have a massive set of rings not unlike the famous rings of Saturn, only our rings will be composed of our own detritus. These growing rings cause more than a few problems for those seeking to explore the solar system, as well as those of us stuck here on land. For starters, the trash is flying around the planet at incredibly high speeds, and there is so much of it that it is becoming increasingly difficult for satellites and spacecraft to navigate around. Because of the high speeds of the debris, an atmospheric collision with a spacecraft could be devastating, while a fast-moving piece of space detritus that manages to make it through the atmosphere could wreak havoc on the planet and those of us down below. Often, items headed towards Earth's surface burn up as they pass through the atmosphere, but this is not always the case, and the more trash that accumulates around our planet, the greater the chances that pieces could survive the fall to Earth and greatly injure those of us below. But how are we to go about cleaning up the mess above our heads before it conglomerates into an enormous ring that causes even more issues? This is a delicate issue, as the debris is spinning and orbiting at such fast speeds that many normal methods, such as grabbing the larger pieces with a robotic arm, are not feasible, as the debris would just destroy the equipment. One solution, proposed by Jake Abbott, a mechanical engineering professor at the University of Utah, was published in the science journal Nature and suggests using magnets to attract the debris instead of attempting to grab it. He proposes that this theory will work even on debris that does not have a metal component, because of the electric eddy currents generated by spinning, non-magnetic objects and activated with spinning magnets. Eddy currents are swirling, magnetically induced currents that circulate as loops of electrical current within a conductor. Although it is not currently clear whether Abbott's proposition will be effective as a way to begin the space clear-up, or where all of the collected detritus will end up, it is ultimately the first step in solving a looming problem that is only set to get worse if not addressed. NASA looking for people to spend a year pretending they live on Mars. NASA is currently seeking potential applicants to spend a year living in a 1,700 square foot space with 3 other people and pretend they are living on Mars. They describe the job as a 1-year analog mission in a habitat to simulate life on a distant world. Essentially, NASA wants to pay volunteers to live in a simulation to observe how humans would live on the red planet and how they would deal with problems that occur. The lead scientist for NASA's Advanced Food Technology Research effort, Grace Douglas, says that this analog mission will help collect data and benefit actual flights into space. It will allow the researchers to study any unforeseen challenges that might come up during a genuine expedition. Douglas explains that a simulated experience on Earth can still give great insight into both the physical and mental difficulties astronauts will go through during their time in space and on Mars. For this simulation, NASA is currently searching for 4 people to act as crew members and live in a 3D printed module at the Johnson Space Center in Houston. The simulated site is about 1,700 square feet and is called Mars Dune Alpha. It is modelled after the base they expect to build once on the red planet. The candidates are expected to live and work within this space while performing various tasks like robotics, simulated spacewalks, and other communications or research. They must be healthy US citizens or permanent residents between 30 and 55 years old with no dietary requirements or health concerns. Candidates must also have a master's degree in a STEM field or experience in aircraft and piloting. Although these 4 people will be on Earth, they will still experience challenges as if they were actually on Mars. There are currently no windows planned for the base. The food will be ready-to-eat astronaut food, and only some plants will be provided. NASA intends to simulate equipment failure, communication delays, resource limitations, and additional environmental issues. It is meant to create realistic situations and inspire the members to develop solutions while allowing the research team to observe them under incredible amounts of stress. If you qualify for this experiment and want to live out your Martian dreams, you can apply via NASA's website. They expect to hold 3 separate experiments beginning in fall 2022. This analog mission is not for the everyday person, as the perfect candidate is very similar to a real astronaut. They need to be motivated, resourceful, and competent. Living a year away from your everyday life gives you a lot of freedom, but you need to have the knowledge and skill to survive on your own, even to qualify. These 4 crew members won't be astronauts by the end of their year-long mission. While they won't be traveling through space, their experiences and contribution will help bring humans closer to landing and living on the Red Planet. NASA's Hubble captures the clearest view of the dark side of a hot Jupiter exoplanet. Those of us stuck here on Earth are familiar with the fact that our planet completes a full rotation on its axis so that the entire surface is illuminated by the sun once every 24 hours. This is not the case for all celestial bodies within the solar system, though. One such planet is the enormous gas giant named WASP 121b, which is located 850 light-years from Earth and is tidally locked with the same side always facing its star. This exoplanet offers an incredibly interesting case study for astronomers for many reasons. For starters, it is almost double the size of the Milky Way's resident gas giant Jupiter and orbits its star once every 30 hours, which is easily one of the fastest orbits yet discovered. Any closer and the gravitational pull from the star would disintegrate the planet. Researchers have long been interested in the remarkably frigid dark side of the planet, which exists in stark contrast to the blazing side that faces the star with temperatures well over 2000 degrees Celsius. In studying the distinct atmospheric changes that occur between the 2 drastically different hemispheres, and how this dichotomy affects the atmosphere. However, previously, there was no image clear enough to study this dark side until recently, when an international team of researchers was able to view the mysterious hidden side through new images taken by NASA's Hubble Space Telescope, and what they found was incredibly surprising. On the dark side of WASP 121b, the planet's surface is clouded with whispering metal clouds and liquid rain, both of which are instantly vaporized as they cross to the warmer hemisphere. They were able to carefully observe and map the incredible fluctuations in temperature between the 2 locations, as well as how water was able to circulate between the 2 through the atmosphere despite the drastic temperature differences. We are familiar with a version of this process on Earth, as water rotates through the water cycle and changes from a solid to a liquid to a gas and back again. But this process is drastically more intense on WASP 121b due to temperatures in excess of 3000 degrees Kelvin. On the sun-facing side, water particles are blasted apart by the intense heat, where they are then blown to the cooler side to reform into liquid before being blown back to the beginning of the process, which is fueled by incredibly powerful winds, stirring up the planet's surface at speeds of over 17,000 kilometers per hour. This study provided valuable information to scientists studying the atmospheric cycles in planets beyond our own, which can help to generate a more complete understanding of how the universe functions. While it is much easier to study planets who rotate around an axis as they orbit their suns, catching glimpses of tidally locked planets such as WASP 121b gives an incredible sneak peek into parts of the universe that are not so easily viewed. NASA plans to destroy the International Space Station in January 2031. all good things must come to an end, and it seems that NASA's famous International Space Station is not exempt from that list. It was always known that the ISS, which was launched into orbit in 2000, would not live forever, and that it must one day be retired. But NASA recently released a statement detailing how they plan to deal with the massive orbiting structure, which is over 100 meters from end to end. As it turns out, its fate is not so surprising, as it will be deorbiting into Point Nemo, a remote location in the southern Pacific Ocean, also known as the Spacecraft Cemetery because of the number of spacecraft and satellites that have plunged into the waters there. This location is so popular for good reason. At over 2,600 kilometers away from land, it is one of the most remote locations in the ocean and has served as a graveyard for over 250 fallen pieces of space debris. Its remoteness makes it an ideal target for things intentionally being taken out of orbit, as there is a much larger room for error and an incredibly low probability of coming into contact with humans on its descent. It will certainly be the end of an era for the ISS once it finally completes its 31-year tenure as a premier space lab and observatory. Continuously occupied by astronauts for over 2 decades, it has been a key glimpse into the expanse of space that stretches beyond our atmosphere, and its value to the scientific fields cannot be understated. There is no doubt that decades orbiting the Earth takes its toll, and the International Space Station is clearly showing its age. The astronauts on board are always alert for leaks, cracks, and other signs of structural failings, especially as they depend upon the station for everything from air to gravity. Additionally, the ISS is increasingly vulnerable to space junk, especially as a piece of debris as small as a chip of paint can make huge impacts, like cracking windows or destroying the robotic arm. But, always looking to the future, NASA has announced that it will award commercial contracts for the construction of the International Space Station's eventual replacement, which will greatly expand the possibilities and usefulness of its famous predecessor. Billionaire-owned companies such as Blue Origin, SpaceX, and Voyager Space have all been speculated to be vying for the elite contract. There is no doubt that the groundbreaking impacts of the ISS have had huge benefits for our understanding of space travel, microgravity, and space exploration. Swirling winds on Saturn trigger never-before-seen auroras. Often when we are looking for something new in space, we think we need to look further and build equipment that will let us spy on worlds light years upon light years away from us. Though that is not always the case. A 2022 study has observed a new phenomenon right here in our very own solar system. It is the ringed planet itself, Saturn, that is the focus of this discovery, with some colourful shows taking place that we are yet to see elsewhere. Saturn has been seen to have some auroras, prompting stunning arrays of colour on the planet. Scientists have speculated that they may be the result of wind within the atmosphere of the planet, though the mechanics behind what is really happening remains unknown. Auroras are typically pushed into action from energized particles moving from the magnetosphere of a planet into the atmosphere of the planet. Whereas for us here on Earth, auroras are pushed by the charged particles from the Sun. For Jupiter and Saturn, the charged particles are not from the Sun, but rather volcanic eruptions on their respective moons. This was outlined in a statement from the W.M. Keck Observatory. This means we have a whole new type of aurora we are observing on Saturn that we will not see here on Earth, as it is the planet's own atmospheric winds propelling the display. Tom Stallard, the co-author of the study and an associate professor in planetary astronomy at the University of Leicester, explained the search for different types of auroras takes us back to some of our very first theories about those on Earth. They spoke of the etymology of the name aurora, that here on Earth, where they are essentially powered from the sun, their name, aurora borealis, originates from the dawn of the northern wind. So, having found that on Saturn it is the winds in the atmosphere that drive the aurora, we have truly discovered an aurora borealis, as the name describes the phenomenon. The team used the W.M. Keck Observatory, based in Mauna Kea, Hawaii, to observe the winds moving through the upper atmosphere of Saturn. They used the near-infrared spectrograph to measure emissions from this part of the atmosphere. This data was then further applied, allowing the team to map out the weather currents of the planet. The results seem to suggest that the weather system on Saturn is the result of the thermosphere, with winds in the ionosphere, the layer of the atmosphere with a high concentration of ions and free electrons. It is this combination of currents, winds, and layers within the atmosphere that comes together to form these distinctive bright auroras. The statement has also suggested that these winds could be the reason Saturn has a rather varied and unpredictable rate of rotation. This has long eluded scientists, simply complicating the process of determining how long days last on Saturn. As we uncover more about the winds of this planet, we hope to unravel more and more information, from the length of each day to what is causing the auroras to occur. It is no surprise that there are endless things for us to discover in space. There are countless areas of study and limitless opportunities to explore. This is just the beginning of our search into space. Europa has volcanoes on the floor of its subsurface ocean. Although Jupiter's icy moon Europa might not look like much on the surface, it is a source of great interest to astronomers studying space in general, as well as the potential for life outside of Earth. One of the prevailing reasons for this interest is the fact that Europa's unique surface is the smoothest surface of any known object in the solar system, and, with a salty subsurface ocean beneath, many believe it could also potentially harbour some form of life within its waters. Because of this, astronomers have carefully studied all elements of the unique planet in detail so that they could gather a better understanding of what the contents likely look like, and one of the newest of these revelations is quite interesting. Recently published study results demonstrated, through 3D modelling, the most detailed study of the internal heating system and its effects on the icy surface that has been completed to date. The study showed how the core of the moon may produce enough heat to partially melt the rocky inner layer just enough to create subsurface volcanoes, further validating decades-long speculation regarding volcanic activity on Europa. Whereas other moons, such as Jupiter's neighbouring moon Io, are highly volcanic with obvious activity, Europa's volcanoes, if they exist at all, have been much harder to pin down until now. The study details in great depth the flow of heat through the rocky area of the inner surface, as well as how the pull of Jupiter's gravity, which is much weaker on Europa than Io, likely helps to stoke these fires on the sea floor below the ocean, especially in areas near the poles where there is more heat generated. The team proposed that this volcanic activity has been continuing through the lifespan of Europa and will likely continue to do so, albeit in a much weaker capacity, as the interior cools throughout the course of time. In Europa's case, a long-maintained volcanic seafloor slowly warming and circulating the ocean across the surface astronomically increases the opportunity for the development of extraterrestrial lifeforms. One of the researchers who published the study, Dr. Behunkova, said that Europa is one of the rare planetary bodies that might have maintained volcanic activity over billions of years, and possibly the only one beyond Earth that has large water reservoirs and a long-lived source of energy. This certainly creates exciting possibilities for researchers attempting to uncover the mysteries of space, especially as they continue in the quest for extraterrestrial life. Weird nearby gamma-ray burst defies expectations. It seems that every time researchers think that they have nailed down how one aspect of space functions, an anomaly shows up and forces them to rethink everything that they thought they knew. Most recently, scientists were able to have front-row seats to an incredible gamma-ray burst captured by NASA's space observatories Fermi and Swift and originating from the area of space near the Eridanus constellation in the southern hemisphere, a rather close 1 billion light-years away. The burst and its subsequent afterglow took place over several days, as scientists watched and carefully recorded the progress, eager to learn more about how gamma-ray bursts form and what happens in their wake. The only problem was that the burst did not seem to follow the typical rules that had been loosely laid down by previous occurrences. Due to the proximity of the spectacle, scientists observing from Earth were able to record much higher energy photons than are typically able to be observed in these instances, as the higher energy photons from farther away usually never reach Earth because they are instead absorbed in collisions with background light. Using mobilized gamma-ray telescopes to observe the 13-hour-long explosion, the research team was able to analyze these unusually high levels of photons, which revealed something very intriguing. Surprisingly, the analysis of the radiation emitted from the recent gamma-ray burst revealed a radiation pattern that was very similar to that of X-rays, a fact that was both shocking and one of the last things that astronomers would have expected, as the two instances are believed to be caused by entirely different phenomena and to cause two different types of radiation. Because they are so mysterious, nobody is quite sure exactly how gamma-ray bursts are formed. Some think that they are caused when massive stars up to 10 times the size of the Sun explode, leaving behind equally mysterious black holes in their wake. Still, others hypothesize that they are generated through the collision of two neutron stars, which also has been shown to cause a black hole. The recent analysis of the properties of these high-powered gamma rays has forced researchers to consider whether they might have been wrong about the provenance of these mysterious bursts altogether, and many researchers have gone back to the drawing board to attempt to discover why such different phenomena as gamma rays and X-rays would have such similar signatures. One of the reasons why research in this area is so limited and full of guesswork is due to the fact that only 4 gamma-ray bursts have been able to be captured from Earth, leaving astronomers to attempt to discern patterns from a rather small dataset. Luckily, scientists are hopeful that recent advances in space viewing technology and instruments will assist in closing this gap, providing more observational data to support current hypotheses and help to solve the mystery of gamma-ray bursts once and for all. A mysterious wobble is moving Mars's poles around. A good few of us have a strange neighbour we keep an eye out for. Planet Earth has a rather quirky neighbour too. Mars, the red planet one door down from us, has been wobbling as it spins, unusual behaviour to say the least, according to research published in 2020 in the journal Geophysical Research Papers, though the reason why has left scientists baffled. As Mars has been waving around and dancing off its course, the poles of the planet have been moving off from the axis of rotation. The study quoted that the poles moved about 4 inches away from the axis of rotation over a 200-day period. This odd waving around does have a name, the Chandler wobble. Strangely enough, astronomers have seen this phenomenon before, here on Earth. While we did not know that this straying away from the central point is possible, we were yet to observe it elsewhere, and we are still no closer to finding a definitive answer as to why this peculiar activity takes place. The Chandler wobble was named after Seth Carlo Chandler, the man who was responsible for uncovering this unusual event more than 100 years ago. Science writer Jack Lee wrote at EOS that the wobbling takes place when planets are not perfectly spherical. It is also worth noting that the wobble of Earth is a much more significant size than Mars, with our wobble straying 30 feet from the axis of rotation, with the wobble pattern looping every 433 days. It's not too big of a deal for us humans when Earth has a wobbly rotation. This has a small, insignificant impact upon planet Earth, but does not appear to be damaging or harmful in the slightest. But we still know very little about it. Scientific calculations seem to indicate that the wobble will naturally fade away eventually. A 2021 study has suggested that the Chandler wobble on Earth is being prolonged and continuing with such momentum because of changes in the pressure of the atmosphere and in our oceans. A similar pattern of logic has then been applied to Mars. Thanks to data collected by the Mars Odyssey, the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, and the Mars Global Surveyor, we have 18 years of information and monitoring of Mars available. The team has also suggested that a natural correction of the planet's poles could happen, like we think it will for Earth eventually. Though for now, the wobble seems to be persistent and fairly set in stone. Of course, Mars is ocean-free, though there is a real chance that the atmospheric pressure alone could be enough to make the red planet a little all over the place. It will take many more observations, plenty more theories, and maybe even for the wobbles to eventually correct themselves until we get to the bottom of this unusual planetary phenomenon. There is so much out there for us to discover and delve into, from the stars we can see as we glance up above, to the unusual happenings within our very own solar system. What will more research uncover? Hubble monitors weird dark vortex on Neptune. In 2018, scientists observed a strange phenomenon near Neptune using the NASA ESA Hubble Space Telescope. It turned out to be a giant dark storm, measuring at 7,400 kilometers in diameter, hovering over the northern hemisphere of Neptune. Since then, the storm's movements have been tracked and analyzed, and for a while it followed expected paths, drifting south towards Neptune's equator at the start of 2020. At this point, scientists expected the vortex to vanish from sight. However, by August of 2020, they were shocked to find the vortex doubling back up north to where it had originated. The behavior is peculiar, as scientists have studied Neptune's vortexes and storms before, and therefore should be able to predict their movements with a degree of confidence. We know a lot about them. They are high-pressure systems which can form at any latitudes, and then typically migrate to the equator. They stay intact for so long as they journey down the planet due to the strong Coriolis force exerted in the northern hemisphere of Neptune. However, the Coriolis force weakens considerably the closer one gets to the equator, and therefore, once a storm hits this point, the external forces are no longer enough to keep it held together, and they disintegrate. It turns out the observed storm of 2018 to 2020 did not venture close enough to the equator to lose the strength of the Coriolis force, and thus stayed intact despite guesses made by simulated models. About the same time that this mysterious path change happened, a smaller vortex appeared near the original one, and then proceeded to disappear. It emerged from the side of the larger storm closest to the equator, which fits theories of the disruptive nature of the equatorial zone. Although, while a disruption to the larger vortex makes sense scientifically, the construction of a new one does not give it being located in an area severely lacking in Coriolis force. Explanations for the new smaller vortex are still disputed, with best theories suggesting that the larger vortex shed a piece of itself to redirect its path away from the equator. Given that this theory neatly explains two strange discoveries, it seems like a nice answer to things we otherwise cannot explain. And yet, we do not know for sure why things happen as they do, both in space, thousands of years ago, or in the deepest layer of the Earth. There is so much more to learn and discover about everything, and we are making headway every day. NASA Mars rover finds organic molecules in Jezero crater. As scientists continually peer across Mars's red expanse through the eyes of the Mars rover, searching for signs of the potential for life, they are constantly uncovering more and more pieces of the mysterious planetary puzzle that is our cosmic neighbor. Recently, analysis conducted of the Jezero crater using Perseverance's Sherlock, or Scanning Habitable Environments with Raman and Luminescence for Organics and Chemicals instrument, confirmed the presence of carbon-containing molecules within the rocks and dust inside the crater. The Jezero crater is what remains of an old lake bed that was likely formed in the early life of the planet from flowing lava. This discovery of carbon, which is an organic molecule needed to form even the simplest building blocks of life, is an exciting one for scientists who are looking for potential clues of former microbial life on the ancient, uninhabited and desolate planet. The rover Perseverance, affectionately known by scientists as Percy, will continue to collect these samples from within the Jezero crater, and these samples will then be transported to Earth by a joint campaign undertaken by NASA and the European Space Agency, although it will likely be several years before this mission is successfully realized. Percy's mission is twofold. The first is to search for indications that there may have once been microbial life on Mars, and the second is to collect promising samples in preparation for the return expedition, which will be the first ever Mars sample return effort. It seems that Percy has already made excellent progress towards fulfilling both goals with this latest organic matter discovery. However, although this find is important when it comes to piecing together the history of the planet and its potential for ancient life, it does not by a long shot confirm that there was ever life on Mars. Although carbon is necessary for organic life, NASA said in a statement that confirmation of organics is not a confirmation that life once existed in Jezero, and left telltale signs. There are both biological and non-biological mechanisms that create organics. In fact, organic compounds have also been identified elsewhere on the surface of Mars, as the Curiosity rover also located organic compounds in the Gale crater, far removed from the Jezero crater. Before further inferences can be made about the possibility of life on Mars, scientists must first ascertain whether biological or non-biological processes created the compounds which were discovered, something that is not an easy task in the slightest. Hopefully, further analysis of these samples will reveal valuable information about the ancient history of Mars and what it might mean for those of us still landlocked here on Earth. NASA spacecraft just saw the North Pole of Europa. Jupiter has 79 moons, putting Earth's measly one to shame. And with so many moons, it is unsurprising that there is a great deal we do not yet know about them. NASA are on it though. With their spacecraft Juno being sent to orbit Jupiter, plenty of insights are being frequently sent back to us here on Earth. The most recent of which tells us a little more about Europa, Jupiter's icy moon. Up until now, we have not seen all of Europa, with no photos being taken from a distance and no sightings of the North Pole region. This camera-shy moon has finally been captured by Juno, and the results are more exciting than we had guessed. Europa's icy North Pole seems to have water vapor that looks as though it is rising out of the moon in plumes, suggesting the oceans of this planet could have conditions that could be home to life. Looking for signs of life in space, especially within our own solar system, is a thrilling aspect of astronomical research. Up until now, a great deal of research in our own solar system has looked at how the conditions on Mars could have once supported life, though now it seems Europa could be a new contender. Admittedly, the photo quality from Juno is poor in the images received so far. With a distance of 50,000 miles between the spacecraft and the Moon, the resolution is not spectacular. However, next year, Juno is due to travel just a few hundred miles above the same spot of Europa, giving us a great opportunity to look forward to just on the horizon. Scott Bolton, the Juno Principal Investigator and Director of the Space Science and Engineering Division of the Southwest Research Institute, described this as a tantalizing example and a taste of what's to come. The advancements we can see just around the corner continue to be just as thrilling as ever. Hopefully more questions and information will be coming our way shortly. Whether we find one more piece of information in a wider piece of research, or we are uncovering some answers to big questions, science is fascinating and the research is never complete. Strongest Mars quakes yet, discovered by NASA's InSight lander. Now leaving behind the remarkable discoveries we can find here on our own planet, similar fascinating findings have been made on our neighbour Mars. On September 18th, InSight Mars lander's 1000th day on the surface of the Red Planet, the rover detected one of the biggest Mars quakes yet, with an estimated magnitude of 4.2, and even more impressively, it shook the ground for almost 90 whole minutes, making it also the longest recorded Mars quake to date. Similar quakes had been recorded a month ago in August. With magnitudes of 4.2 and 4.1, these Mars quakes all make for revolutionary discoveries, as they have 5 times the energy of InSight's previous record holder, which was a 3.7 quake recorded in 2019. It is wondered by some whether these are truly the largest Mars quakes out there, or if we simply have not been able to pick up on others, perhaps due to lack of equipment, or simply because in the grand scheme of things, we have not been exploring Mars for that long. Regardless, this is an even more fascinating discovery because InSight nearly would have missed it due to some unfortunate circumstances in its orbit. Being solar-powered, InSight faced some difficulties when Mars's highly elliptical orbit took it further away from the Sun for a prolonged period of time. Low temperatures and dust buildup further worsened conditions for the spacecraft, meaning NASA had to turn off certain instruments to conserve energy. Extremely luckily for us is that they decided to keep the seismometer on even throughout these challenging times. It makes for an even more exciting discovery that, thanks to the teams at NASA, we did not miss out on. Earth may have been a water world 3 billion years ago. Earlier this year, Harvard published a study on the Earth's water storage capacity, which challenges our long-held assumption that the water volume on Earth's surface has not changed since its formation. The researchers published their calculations and findings in the April issue of AGU Advances. The Harvard team's geochemical calculations suggest that 3 or 4 billion years ago, Earth's ocean could have been 1 to 2 times larger than it is now, potentially covering the entire surface of the planet. PhD students who led the study explained that although it greatly depends on the distribution and overall height of the continents, the ocean could very well have covered an average of 70 to 80% of the land. If the ocean volume then was twice what it is today, the surface of primordial Earth would have been completely flooded. One of the longest-held beliefs of Earth's formation was that its ocean volume has remained relatively consistent throughout its history. The team challenged this idea by studying the chemical components within the Earth's mantle and interior. They gathered as much scientific literature and data as they could find on minerals that showed the bonding of oxygen and hydrogen atoms to calculate Earth's water storage capacity. The researchers determined that the capacity in the mantle billions of years ago was much less than it is today. Over time, water has been falling into our planet's interior due to tectonic movement and subduction. The amount of water in our mantle now is much more significant than what it could hold a few billion years ago. All of that water had to have been somewhere, though, potentially on the Earth's surface. The study is to first provide quantitative evidence that our Earth could have been an actual water world, although many other researchers have previously argued for it. It seems that the 1995 Universal Studios film Waterworld was not so far-fetched after all. Likely, our planet was covered entirely in water. However, this occurred billions of years ago, way before humans. The findings are not conclusive enough for the entire scientific community, as the mineral data used to create the calculations was limited. They only had information up to a certain depth of the mantle. Regardless, the research team is excited for their next project, Mars. They are looking to the red planet and hoping to use a similar model to figure out how much water it had stored in its interior. Scientists discover a weird debris disk around a nearby star. Space is full of all sorts of randomly unique phenomena. Just when we think we have figured out the rules, something unusual comes along to confuse us all over again. Scientists have been baffled once again as a strange disk of debris has been found surrounding a nearby star. Researchers used ALMA, the Atacama Large Millimeter Submillimeter Array based in Chile, to uncover this far-out mystery. The observatory is kitted out with a number of the world's most advanced telescopes, with the ALMA telescope itself having a number of highly sensitive receivers. What makes ALMA most distinctive is perhaps its ability to study the cosmic light from space that flirts with the categorical lines between radio and infrared. This sets it apart from other radio telescopes. This research utilized the Band 6 receivers in the finding of the peculiar debris disk. The odd debris is circling the star HD 53143, which is almost a billion years old and is similar to our Sun. It can be tracked down to the Carina constellation, visible in the southern sky, and is nearly 60 light-years away from Earth. The observations carried out via ALMA showed the disk in question down to millimeter wavelengths, yet the disk looks entirely unlike what we expected. We expected to unearth another debris disk not dissimilar to the Kuiper belt, a circumstellar disk in our outer solar system, a face-on ring with patches of dust within it. As it turns out, this likening does not fit the newly observed disk. This debris disk has been described as the most complex observed to date. What's more is that the observations have led to the disk being categorized as eccentric. Typically, a ring-like debris disk sees a star sat in the center, or at least near to the center of the disk. In elliptical disks, however, the star can be found at just one focus of the ellipse. Elliptical shapes are essentially ovals, each with 2 focus points on opposing sides of the oval shape, or rather on opposing sides of the ellipse. As it turns out, HD 53143 is situated in an elliptically shaped disk. This failed to be observed before now thanks to the use of coronagraphic studies. These are intended to block the light of a star, as this lets us see when nearby objects pass, but this process concealed not only the light of this star, but also the shape of the disk surrounding it. This star is thought to be part of a wider star system, consisting of at least another disk and possibly an exoplanet. Exoplanets being any planetary body outside of our own solar system. Meredith McGregor, an assistant professor at the Centre for Astrophysics and Space Astronomy, CASA, explained that the complex nature of this disk is twofold. Not only is the disk elliptically shaped, with just one star and one focus, it has been deemed likely that there could be a second inner disk, not quite lined up correctly with the disk we know of. This not yet observed secondary disk is thought to be misaligned or tilted when compared to the disk we recently discovered. If this is the case, then there must be at least one planet in the system with a gravitational pull great enough to disturb the material within the disk. These disks of debris are more than bits of dust and rocks in space. Contrary to what you might think, they provide researchers with fundamental information regarding the history of planetary formation and evolution. If we have records of the past, we can make greater informed predictions about the future of both our own planet and solar system, and others we observe out there in the universe. Hopefully, as we continue our research, we will be able to confirm the existence of both a planetary body and this secondary disk. Scientists discover a rare asteroid that will follow Earth in orbit for the next 4,000 years. Some astronomical discoveries do not take place tens of light years away. Some take place much closer to home. Scientists in early 2022 managed to confirm the existence of an Earth-Trojan asteroid. An Earth-Trojan asteroid is an asteroid that orbits our Sun in an orbit similar to Earth, meaning it appears to trail the Earth, stuck in a near space to us. This study was published in Nature Communications in February 2022 and details the little shadow the Earth has acquired for the next several thousand years. It was an international team of astronomers that made the discovery, led by a group based at the Institute of Cosmos Sciences of the University of Barcelona, that managed to confirm the existence of 2020 XL5. This discovery was a decade in the making, and this asteroid companion is only the second ever Earth Trojan to be uncovered. Not only is this just the second Earth Trojan to ever be discovered, but it is also the largest to be discovered, with a diameter of just 0.7 miles. Despite them trailing along so close to the Earth, Earth Trojans are notoriously difficult to spot. This is thanks to the close proximity to the Sun, making the window of opportunity to observe these asteroids very narrow. Hopefully, we will be able to find out more about our little friend and those to join us in the future over the next few thousand years.